Hello, everyone, and thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney from London as we discuss the next steps in personal computing. We're wearing Quest 3 headsets with meta avatars. We're using hand tracking and built-in microphones in a studio built by David Heaney here in Unity. We've got a bunch of news that just crossed our site with Among Us VR becoming Among Us 3D with crossplay to flat screens. That's huge news that just crossed our site, reported by Henry Stockdale, that I'm sure we'll see discussed in the comments. But that's one we're going to digest over on our other podcast with Don Hopper as we dive deep into the changing market for immersive games over there. I want to point out our recent video with Andrew Ike over at Alchemy Labs covering their games from Job Simulator to Dimensional Double Shift, and to our viewer who just noted that we haven't updated our Gamescast podcast feed in a while still. We're sorry about that. We're changing our process here still, and I think you'll see the power of the format that we've got lined up here if you go check out that interview with Andrew and some of the other things what we're doing, starting in the studio and then ending in a developer's world with them. But that means we've got comments and news flowing through our studios in ways we never had before, and we're still getting to grips with getting it all out to you efficiently. We have an Aaron Bellamy. David, what do we have today?
Hello, everyone. So apologies that we're starting a bit later today, but that is because, as you can see on UploadVR.com, we have had several big pieces of news drop just as we go on, and I see some of our commenters joking about that happening. As always, Arlen joking that Meta is saying, oh, you want to report the news? We'll give you some news. And it does seem to be a constant trend of things popping up just as we want to go live. So that Horizon Worlds news, we will cover at the end of the show. That will be our kind of big discussion at the end. And if you missed it, you can check out on our website. It's that there is a Horizon Worlds desktop editor now available in early access. And Meta has launched a 50 million creator fund, as well as enabled the in-world monetization features globally. So that will be what we discuss at the end. Before that, we have 5 topics. We're going to discuss the news that the Ray-Ban Meta glasses have sold 2 million units and that production is going to be vastly increased, the production capacity. We will then talk about Prima Immersive. It's an Apple Vision Pro app that, from my eyes, offers the highest quality immersive video yet, even higher quality than Apple Immersive Video. And it points to how that format, as we keep saying on the show, is going to be really important when it comes to high quality productions and live sports, for example. We will then talk about Palmer Luckey's Anduril's EagleEye helmet. So we talked last week about how Anduril now has the US Army's IVAS contract. And since the show, Palmer Luckey has done an interview where he's gone into some detail about the hardware and the capabilities, as well as the name EagleEye. And so he's making some big claims there, claiming that this is going to be the best AR, MR system ever built by far. We'll then talk about Quest V74, Horizon OS version 74, which brings web shortcuts, DisplayPort out, improved casting, and more. And then we will talk about PlayStation VR2's hand tracking. So I went into the first game that supports hand tracking on PlayStation VR2, Waltz of the Wizard. And as we all know, I'm sure, that game is also available on Quest. So I directly compared them. And I recommend reading that article because I go into some of the nuances here about how there are actually 2 hand tracking modes on Quest. So once we get those 5 topics discussed, we will go into our Horizon Worlds discussion at the end of the show. So please stick with us.
Yeah, why would you as the user want anything less than the best hand tracking quality? Why would you have 2 modes on Quest is a question that now is in my mind, David, that we're going to have to address at some point in the show. Hello to our members and our regular viewers. I saw Onokazi saying that they were ready to tune in. I see someone else saying that they don't have to time travel today to catch up to us because of the timing of the show. I see we've got, I think it is, I want to get their name right because it's blurry today. Not Suspicious. Yeah, that's the name of the development studio of Airspace Defender. And so they're in our audience out there watching with us today. Thank you for tuning in. And yeah, I want to encourage any prospective developers. That was what was cool yesterday with the Andrew discussion, was it felt like even if you weren't a developer, we were speaking to people who wanted to be developers in the audience. And I think Andrew got that vibe from some folks in our audience. Guy Godin out there, what is he saying? Interesting. By the way, Meta recommends not using high frequency hand tracking. What's he saying there?
It's not actually correct. We'll get into that later into the
All right.
discussion. I have the full details later. Let's not jump the thing on that. But I think Godin's confusing the old high frequency mode with what they've renamed it to the fast motion mode. But we'll get into that all at the end.
I'm seeing everyone out there in Texas. A lot of people out in Texas. I was, Andrew out there was calling into us from Texas, and a lot of cool things going out there in Austin. I want to go see some interesting things out there. So stay tuned for us on that. Let's just get right in through these news subjects. Not Texas, it's Austin. I appreciate that. Sorry, I apologize. I apologize for not understanding that Austin has seceded from Texas. All right, let's get into this first subject with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses having sold 2 million units, production to be vastly increased. Oh, when do you want my commentary, now or later? Okay, because it smells like Zuckerberg is investing in this. He smells blood in the water, and this is where he's doubling down. The question is he pulling his chips up from other bets?
Sure. So I'll just run through the news here. So this came from EssilorLuxottica's CEO, EssilorLuxottica being the company that owns the Ray-Ban brand, as well as a bunch of other brands like Oakley. So this was during their Q4 2024 earnings call. He confirmed that 2 million have been sold to date. Now, you'll remember we discussed in a recent show how 1 million had been sold in 2024, but these things launched at Q4 2023. So it means that in that launch quarter, they sold 1 million, and then they sold 1 million in 2024 for a total of 2 million. And so he told investors, the CEO of EssilorLuxottica, that this has been a great success, that retention has been increasing over time too. So people are actually using it more and more over time. And he suggested that the multimodal visual AI features that let you ask questions about what you're seeing via the camera, which are currently limited to the US, Canada, and Australia, will expand to other countries worldwide soon. And that's important, obviously, because this is a European company. It's a French-Italian company. So right now, if you're not in the US, Canada, or Australia, this is a gimped product compared to what it's capable of. So many of the visual AI features, reminders, live translation, Spotify, a bunch of these things are limited to a few countries. So it's very much so in their interest to see those features expand. So the headline news here, though, is that they want to increase production to 10 million annual units by the end of 2026. So by the end of 2026, they want the rate to be 10 million per year. And they basically are saying here that right now they are actually production limited. They're selling them as fast as they can make them. And their scramble is to build up more factories in China and get the production capacity up.
Looks like people are still catching up, so good luck to you. You have to increase your speeds to catch up to us as the time goes on. So I feel bad for you 2Xers out there if you're one of those in the later. James commenting on people's data and the idea that these are cameras everywhere. I think we'll discuss some of that later when we discuss the latest with Anduril EagleEye. Anything else here you want to discuss before we move on to the next subject?
Yeah, I guess we should just note that Meta Connect was announced as being September 17th and 18th. And at that conference, we expect them to also launch Oakley Meta glasses, one of EssilorLuxottica's other brands, as well as Meta HUD glasses that aren't through one of these brands, Meta's own glasses that will have a little heads-up display in one eye, 20 or 30 degrees field of view, show you notifications, text output from the AI so it isn't always yapping in your ear, as well as, little thumbnail previews of the photos you've taken, etc. So as we keep saying in the show, we expect that Meta is going to continue to increase its investment in smart glasses of all kinds, and we'll see a lot of that at Connect in September.
Yeah, the thing that's remarkable to me, like if I reach back into my memory banks, which are fading with time, I was in the Orange County area of California and covering was it Red, Red Digital, and Jim Gennard, I think is the guy's name, who owned Red Digital, and he also owned, I think, the Oakley brand or some of these other smart or glasses brands, which ended up selling them, and now they're part of this other big conglomerate. But it was fascinating to see back then. I'm talking 15 years ago now. This is ancient history. Them like let's put a heads up display in glasses. Let's put them in these types. Let's put a heads up display in them. This is not a new idea. This is a very old idea being revisited, and the question is whether it's good enough now to actually achieve the market that Mark Zuckerberg smells in the water.
Yeah, so I think two things have changed here, right? One is that the small cameras that you can put in these things have gotten better and better, right? The Ray-Ban Stories, which was the Meta and EssilorLuxottica's first attempt at smart glasses a couple of years ago, it really failed. And one of the reasons for that was the cameras were just not good. But now the proliferation of these small cameras that come from smartphones, right? These are the same kind of sensors that you would often have in your smartphone selfie camera at that same kind of scale. And these have gotten so good that these can actually take good photos. The other thing is, of course, AI, right? Zuckerberg argues that originally he thought you would need, it switched over automatically, with advancements of large language models and conversational AI, and soon the agentic nature of these LLMs coming from all the big players. They argue that now is the time for smart glasses, and the HUD is just going to be an addition to this capability that they think is already compelling without it.
Good question from Callie out there. Speaking of MetaConnect and hopefully headset news, do we know around when the Metanovo, the Lenovo headset, is launching? And I think that is a no, we don't know. But I'm going to comment there that we are deeply interested in those additional headsets. We have to see what timeline they launch on and whether they actually follow through on launching. It's a really important part of Meta's puzzle. Sorry, go ahead, David.
No, that your answer is correct there. We don't know. We have reason to believe, based on a potential leak, that the Asus headset will actually be the first third-party Horizon OS headset. That'll be under Asus's ROG, Republic of Gamers brand, and be kind of a gaming-orientated headset, trying to design around what gamers want, perhaps. We don't know if that's going to be announced at an Asus event and Lenovo's at a Lenovo event, or if it will be at MetaConnect. It's possible they want to give them their own space. The last thing I'd say on this story, the glasses, is that kind of almost by accident, I think Meta's partnership and now investment, right? A few months ago, they did take a 5% stake in EssilorLuxottica. It's probably accidentally the best move they ever made when it came to Reality Labs, right? Because if you're trying to think, we always talk about how in headsets, what's their unique value that means that they can take on Android XR and Vision OS in the long term. On glasses, what makes them able to take on, Samsung, Google glasses and Apple glasses that we expect to be coming? And the answer for now seems to be that they have, the most desirable glasses brands and designs in the world, right? You could argue that much of the success, in fact, you could pretty much say definitively, much of the success of Ray-Ban Meta has been the Ray-Ban part, and that will obviously be extended with Oakley, which is why it'll be really interesting to see when Meta does launch its own smart glasses with a HUD separately from all that branding. How well will that do with just the Meta brand?
Do you think the white notification light is a permanent feature of Meta's glasses product line?
So never say never, right? I'm sure maybe one day, like on the scale of decades, it goes away. But I think for the foreseeable future, that's going to be there, right? They specifically for the Ray-Ban Meta glasses put in the investment to make sure that that is actually also a sensor. So if you cover it, it won't take photos anymore. You cover that white LED, it doesn't take photos anymore. So that tells me that this is something that is pretty core to the product. Interestingly, for these Oakley Meta glasses, according to Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, the camera is going to be in the center and here. So I don't know what they're going to do about the LED. Perhaps it'll just be right beside the camera. Perhaps it'll be, on one side or both sides. We'll have to see what that hardware design looks like in the end.
Well, see, that's what's fascinating, and I think we're going to follow up on this. I would love to find out what the LED light design is, because what we've seen over the last 4 years is Meta dropping sort of like the apologies for gathering your data one by one. There was the portal camera calling device, which had a physical slider over the camera because Facebook and Meta knew that people hated the idea of an omnipresent camera marketed by Facebook on them all the time. They wanted to have that physical they had to start weighing all the physical, the peace of mind that comes with knowing that the camera is not pointed at you at any given moment. And here we are talking about the rise of Oakley branded glasses that, not just there's a scenario that I'm thinking of a skier or a snowboarder wearing a GoPro strapped to their head, right above their head like a unicorn, and they're flying down the mountain at however many miles an hour they can get to, and this visor of any normal glasses that exist today is about helping you see the snow and protect your eyes from the glare of the snow over the course of 8 hours out there on the slopes, or 16 hours over a weekend, right? It's about protecting your literal eyes. But that use case that I'm discussing, David, the white light is less important. You're in an extreme sports scenario where there's assumed to be less privacy, like you're in a very public location. And I wonder about Meta or someone else trying to reach for just changing the social norms that, you actually don't need the night. We don't legally need the light. Therefore, you're not getting the light.
Yeah, we'll certainly would have a GoPro on your head for, as you say, if you're going down a ski slope. A lot of people do already have these sort of cameras. Cyclists, a lot of them, today you even have like dash cams for bikes that you stick on the handlebars. That's pretty normal already. But I think still we're likely to see that white light, because why not for what it costs $1 to add.
So what market is that white light required by law? I'd like to understand that. I'm unfamiliar with that level of reporting, so we should know that. So I apologize for not knowing that.
What I do know is that in Japan, all cameras have to make an audible stutter noise.
That's right. Yeah.
So
because
if you're
of the problems
iPhone,
there.
Yeah, you take a picture in Japan and it has to make that noise. But the Ray-Ban glasses already do that, right? In my experience, even if you turn down the volume, they'll still make a full volume shutter noise. So you have audio and visual indications. Are you ready to move on to the next story, or do you want to talk a little bit more about this?
No, I think we'll get back to some of those subjects that I'm kind of hinting at there. I'm trying to make these ideas percolate in the minds of our audience as much as they percolate in our brains a little bit over the course of our episodes. And anytime we discuss something, we always come back to it again and again and again. And we do not encourage you to be drinking during UploadVR episodes. That drinking game some of you participate in. Shame on you. Good luck if you're on that road today. All right. Let's get to this next subject.
Yeah, so Prima Immersive. If you have an Apple Vision Pro, go download this right now. If you don't, it's still interesting to note how they've actually achieved this. So if you missed my introduction here, this is the highest quality immersive 3D video I've ever tried. So I'm referring to 180-degree video in 3D with spatial audio. And you'll know if you listen to this podcast or read UploadVR a lot that we often talk about how good Apple immersive video is, and how, the problem with 180-degree 3D video, which has been around for 10 years now. It was one of the main use cases of the Samsung Gear VR and Oculus Go many years ago. The problem back then was that it sucked, right? The resolution was too low, the bit rate was too low, the perspective was often wrong. Apple came along with Apple Immersive Video and made it good. And so then you have the likes of their Submerged short film and The Weeknd's immersive music video, and some of the other, mini nature documentaries they have on there, which are genuinely compelling. You also have like a taste of sports where they do these highlight reels of like the NBA All-Star game and the Super Bowl, and they're only highlight reels, but they make you go, damn, I would really love to watch this live. That's the future that's coming. But this Prima Immersive is even better, right? So right now, this is just a 16-minute immersive music session from this bluegrass band, AJ Lee and Blue Summit. It's $4 if you want to watch it, or you can watch like a 30-second to 1 minute demo. I think it's good that they have a demo, because you watch it and you're instantly like, okay, I want to watch this whole thing, because this is just crazy how sharp it is. It is just so compelling that it's like it's a light bulb moment where you think, if you can get sports like this, if you can get concerts like this, if you can get, nature documentaries like this sells headsets. We've been saying this before. The problem with immersive video, sorry to repeat myself over and over again, was never that it wasn't a good idea. It's just that no one really took the time to do it good enough. So how are they doing this, right? So they're using the same resolution as Apple, 8K per eye, same frame rate, 90 frames per second. So why is it sharper? So this startup behind this said that they developed the world's first immersive video encoder. So a software encoder specifically designed for this use case that they say delivers industry-leading visual fidelity at 50 to 80% lower bit rate than traditional encoders. So we have a comparison here. I'll make sure I have this the right way around. Let me just check. Yeah. So the first one you'll see here is traditional encoders. This is showing like a close up of what a traditional encoder would output for, I would have said BS, but they put out a demo and I tried it and it's real, right? So they've clearly made some sort of software breakthrough when it comes to video encoders that's allowed this to be possible.
What's the name of the other streaming service that we've also reported on that isn't immersive video? It's a spatial, volumetrically streamed. What Gracia?
Gracia, yeah.
So Gracia is a different technology, and what's interesting, what I want to note is for the people that are the naysayers out there who aren't like seeing the overall arc of progress here. You have startups and companies in this area showing you, actually, we've got a path here to make this scalable. And so they're going through the typical route of like, some of these companies are going through the typical route of let's go get investor funding. Let's go eventually try to have an exit by selling to Microsoft or Apple or something, some kind of future technology. And David is describing that even though Apple Vision Pro, one of the biggest companies on the planet with the most expensive hardware platform, even with their camera technology that they invested in buying from NextVR, there's still someone out there going, the opportunity here is so large, we're going to try to do our own solution and get it to market and make billions outside of that singular company. So keep that in mind. That's still happening in this market.
Yeah, I could see this company being acquired by Apple or Meta or someone like that. This is obviously, a startup that has some very talented, real software engineering go on here. Sometimes, as we saw in the AI world with DeepSeek, just going lower level and taking something that people are using as a library component and saying, screw it, I'm going to rebuild this from the ground up with first principles in a more efficient way can let you defeat the giants, right? So they've done something special here. Mastoras in the comments pointing out, Blackmagic 16K immersive cameras coming out soon. That'll be the same resolution as this. Prima said that they are fully supporting that Blackmagic camera. So they're hoping that creators are going to use that Blackmagic camera to film videos that will go on the Prima platform. They want this thing to be a platform where you go on, you pay per view for immersive videos, with the pitch being, this is the highest quality you've ever seen.
So can you leave this image up here as we address a question from Funky Sloth? So good question, Funky Sloth. And the answer is complicated because this already has been done for sports. It was done years ago for sports, and NextVR was the company that did it for sports. And they encountered other roadblocks other than they encountered a number of roadblocks that made going independent too difficult for them. They couldn't go raise another round of funding, and they ended up selling their technology to Apple and became the foundation of what we see in Apple's ecosystem. So you go to the Apple Immersive Videos section and you enjoy great content today on an Apple Vision Pro. What we're talking about here is there's a pathway beyond what Apple has done today. And the thing that you have to understand is this camera is a bulky monster, and not all, a lot of these cameras are still bulky monsters. I was watching Nope, and I was watching all the special features for the movie Nope, and they were showing the IMAX camera that they used for sections of that. You can't film certain types of shots. You can't film certain types of things if your camera is too darn bulky. And so you see things like that test film, the test full fully full movie that Apple made with their cameras going inside of a fully built submarine, and they tilted the sets around in different ways to see if they could put the camera in really crazy conditions and push them into really small quarters. But it's not the same as a really tiny 4K, 6K, 8K camera that's totally image stabilized. Like we're going to watch movies this year with large sections filmed on iPhones. I think what is the latest 28 years later, I think, has sections filmed on iPhone, but also has all the stabilization equipment usually attached to it. My point is that, right? You can't put a camera like this necessarily behind the backboard of an NBA game. You need a much slimmer
I think
camera
you
for that
can.
situation. Really?
I'm going to disagree on that. I mean, I think you can put. They have, right? They did put it for the
Well,
NBA All Star highlights. They
fair,
did it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's the limit here. I think the issue is that when you talk about these encoders, whether it be Prima, Immersives, or Apple's, these aren't real-time encoders. They're taking all this footage in, and then they're doing a rendering process that takes a very, very long time to get it to be at the kind of bit rate that you want to use. So developing a real-time encoder that can do this, live and send this out to your headset, that's a whole different kettle of fish. That's a different challenge. And we're going to see it solved, right? It's such a big opportunity that whether it be Apple or Meta, we already kind of see it solved for 2D 180 degree, right? We always need to keep mentioning here, this isn't some hypothetical. Today, if you're in the US, you can download the X Stadium app onto your Quest headset and watch 52 NBA games per season. In fact, they just streamed the All-Star game on Sunday, if I'm correct about the time zone, in 180 degree to Quest owners. But once you start adding 3D, once you increase the bit rate and resolution, I think that's 4K, and this is 8K, per eye. So it's just a challenge of doing it in real time over the internet. It's going to be solved at some point, and yeah, I mean it's going to be a flagship moment for whatever company can pull it off.
I think David and I are saying the same thing. He's arguing that this camera is fittable. What I'm arguing, David, is that it's not the right camera to put behind a backboard. What you need is a camera that has very small footprint lens-wise and then runs a cord to everything else down at the sidelines. And these are being built right now, and they're being marketed and sold to various venues right now for the installation and covering exactly as we were describing. So picture a sport like the NBA and take a team like the New York Knicks or Los Angeles Lakers or Clippers, and you pay for the broadcast rights is a big $1 billion check. And then another big check that you have to spend is for the venue to install these cameras. And then there's a third check, which is actually the cameras themselves, right? So you have to come up with all of these money checks to go outfit a venue, to get the broadcast streaming rights, and to get it in a place where you're going to sell enough headsets that like it's a genuine reason to go and like in the Los Angeles market to, instead of going and get season tickets to your Los Angeles Lakers game, you now sit courtside, and during those dunks, the camera auto switches to you being behind the backboard, and you're sitting there with your friends in immersive VR. That's the path we're on. We're waiting for those shoes to drop, so to speak.
Yeah, it'd be a big financial investment, right? That much is true. These are $30,000 cameras per unit here, and then you have to add all of the peripheral equipment to record and do this live. I disagree. It's too big, though. It's not as big as it looks in that photo. You can see it here attached to a drone, and it's being done, right? You can go on and watch the NBA All Star that you reported on the highlights. It's there, right? They have it. They put it behind the board.
And so UFC is mentioning, so Funky Sloth is mentioning UFC would be a big deal too, and that is where I would expect those bets to get placed by Meta. Yeah,
right now you can on X Stadium, the app on Quest. They have UFC. It's NBA, UFC, and NASCAR. It's 2D 180, so we need to give that caveat, but it does exist. It's so interesting to me that sometimes we describe this as a hypothetical. It exists right now. You can, if you're in the US, and it's free for the NBA games, and the other ones you just need, your UFC pass, your NBA pass, your NASCAR pass, whatever you call them for each one.
There's a fascinating question I hadn't really considered before this. Two technologies are before us, right? There's codec avatars and personas that could be you get a scan and then you appear as that person inside of a device. And then we've also got I just relocated for no apparent reason. I might have to disconnect and reconnect here. And then we've got this technology, this immersive camera technology that is taking us courtside. The example I want to bring up here is at some point, I think it was either Next VR or Meta or both, footed the bill for putting their cameras, these same types of cameras, just the old generation, at a presidential debate. Now think about a presidential debate. You've got two candidates from two parties representing the best the election system can produce for the views representing 100, 200 million people. And you hear forms at the corner of their eye, whether they're showing any kind of weakness whatsoever. You're analyzing that person at a level of detail that is ridiculous. And so Meta and these cameras were put at one of the presidential debates quite a long time ago and then streamed to Gear VR. And the thing about it was where they put the cameras were off to the side of the debate. It was like 30 feet away or 40 feet away from both of them to one side. And so you as the viewer are sitting in an audience to view a bunch of blurry blobs on the other side of the room instead of what we need here to do it this way would be two of these monster 16K cameras positioned in front of both candidates to get every pore on their face. Or we go the other route. We recreate them in the avatar systems, and we don't get that benefit of picking apart every little cry on their, every little tear on their face and every little tick on their face.
Yeah, I don't want to get political, but I think what I would prefer personally is rather than getting that traditional format where they're standing at podiums and trying to answer in 30 seconds, have a more intimate setting that suits immersive video where there's one camera and you have both candidates right beside you, right in front of you, and then the interviewer, and they're asked questions and given the time to answer in a long form session over the course of 1, 2, 3 hours, where people can really, really hear in detail rather than the kind of soundbite thing. That would be really compelling. I don't think it suits these kind of they're both standing at a podium far away from you. That sucked from what I'd heard back in the Gear VR day when people tried it. The camera was too low resolution, all of that stuff. And as you say, not in the right place, but maybe the entire format could be improved for that. You're muted, Ian.
Yeah, I'm still having troubles here. I might still need to reconnect because it's like sees me at the border of my space, but I'm not. I can clearly see the border around me. What I was going to say is, historically speaking, there's a lot of history analysis already of the election in which John F. Kennedy won over, I think it was Nixon, and it was one of the first televised presidential debates. And the argument, historically speaking, I believe, was that Kennedy won that because of his appearance on camera in comparison to his competition. So that's what I'm getting at here, right, folks? This is this is how big we think about this technology. And I saw people in our audience going, "This got dark real quick because I made you think about things you didn't want to think about right now while we're talking about our fun technology." But it touches everything, so we're going to keep going there.
Yeah, let's move on to the next topic. Speaking about very serious things, Anduril's EagleEye. So if you missed my explanation at the start of the show, last week we talked about how the US Army's IVAS contract has been transferred from Microsoft to Anduril. Anduril being the defense company that Palmer Luckey founded after being fired by Facebook from Oculus. And ironically, Anduril is now worth much more than what Luckey sold Oculus to Facebook for. It's recently been valued at $28 billion, and a lot of analysts think it's going to become one of the, if not the biggest defense contractors in the world at its current rate of progress and acceleration. So the IVAS contract, if you're completely unfamiliar with this, it's the US Army's program to put an augmented reality visor of some sort on every single soldier that vastly enhances their situational awareness, so that just like in a video game, you would see markers on friendlies, markers on enemies, on the current trajectory, uh, vision augmentation that goes far beyond regular night vision, where you're able to have, outlines on salient targets, analysis of everything that's happening in the battlefield, where instead of having to kind of like manually calculate your firing trajectory, you can see a little dot of where your bullet is going to hit based on the rate of drop of your weapon and the current wind conditions and things like that. All of this stuff is the eventual goal of IVAS. And if you want to hear a lot of details about this, go to our article where we have embedded the section of the interview where Lucky describes this, because last week we had no details. This week we do. The system is called EagleEye, and it's going to be an integrated ballistic visor. So not Microsoft's approach, where you had to kind of like strap on all of the hardware separately, the visor, the battery pack, the compute puck, the sensor clip. All of this had to awkwardly get put onto your headset with all of these different cables that would snag. That was the old approach. Lucky's approach is, and we've been asking on this podcast for years, why does no one just build a helmet, right? Is a helmet. It's an all-in-one helmet that offers, according to Lucky, hearing protection, hearing augmentation, vision protection, vision augmentation, ballistic protection, protection from airbursts, direct fire rounds, blast, and concussion. The whole thing in one seamless product. You just slap it on your head as a helmet. So in this interview, went into a lot of details. He claims that EagleEye will be by far the best AR, VR, MR vision augmentation system that has ever been built, in terms of resolution, in terms of field of view, in terms of graphical fidelity, in terms of sensor quality, and what you can do with those sensors. These are direct quotes from Lucky. He says that Anduril has actually been investing a ton of resources into the development of EagleEye for years now, long before it knew it could secure the IVAS contract. And this kind of underscores Anduril's different approach to the traditional legacy defense contractors, where, what they do is they secure a contract to develop a system, a contract from the government, and then they go and develop the system with that money. And if it goes over, it's called a cost plus contract. They can charge more and more money. And you can see how that creates a very poor incentive system. Anduril takes the more kind of traditional approach. They build a product and then they sell it to the government as a finished product. So that's kind of why they've been developing this EagleEye system from before. So Lucky talks about how this is going to give you warning from incoming drones, allow you to mark targets without the need to use smoke or a laser that enemies can see, shared situational awareness from every EagleEye wearer, as well as networking with all other assets on the battlefield. So if a drone can see something, you can see it too. It gets marked for you. The Anduril's core product is called Lattice. It's a networked software system that connects all of these military platforms together, legacy and Anduril's, into one giant networked system. And it can keep track of an unlimited number of threats. He even wants to use AI so that EagleEye will give predictive guidance. So, if they see an enemy attack helicopter coming in, they'll say, that thing's going to get close enough to engage you in 5 seconds. You need to run to this cover over there to get out of the way. He also wants to do the kind of multimodal visual AI that we talk about with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. He gives the example of, you need to hotwire a car to fuse a bomb. You ask the AI, and the idea is you have, according to Lucky, the distilled full knowledge of every expert in every military domain on every soldier's shoulder, as he says. So the idea here is that he wants to give every soldier in the US military and NATO allies, which they plan to sell it to, superhuman senses and cognition.
Whew, a lot of discussion going on in our audience as people try to wrap their heads around this news. One person saying, this is an expensive helmet that can get destroyed with one round, with the response being that, maybe if the helmet saved the person, if the round stopped there, that then it did its job. That's one of the questions that we will be curious about, and the changing face of war. Okay, so David and I've never served. I've never been in combat. Never, that's not me. But I will talk to people who talk to people who, I will talk to any service members out there who have dealt with any eye-worn gear over the years. David, I'm sure, has open chat communiques. Like, you can reach out to him. I'm sure he'd be willing to talk to you. We need to understand this deeply, because war is changing, and if you go talk to people, you go to talk to some soldiers, I bet the typical view would be, if I'm going to carry more weight, it's going to be more ammo. Being the argument, and I get that, right? Like, you're competing, any gram you put on a soldier or a war fighter is competing with ammo as this top concern. But right now, that's not the biggest concern in war. The biggest concern in war are drones destroying you, that detonates on your head before you get the next drone ready, and you're a person who is piloting these things from a head-mounted display perfectly fine and protected miles away. So what you're talking about is a changing landscape where some people in a war group are probably outfitted in a battle group, or outfitted with something like this. Other people in the group are probably outfitted more traditionally, like some of our people in our comments are probably describing, right? They still have other things to do in a particular battle, not other than getting lost with the larger battle taking place.
Yeah, so when it comes to the idea of weight, Lucky discusses this a lot in the interview. Again, I really recommend that the people in the comments go and watch this interview. We have clipped out the section about IVAS in our article, and he talks about how that is exactly why he wants to make an integrated helmet. Again, we've talked about this on this show for years, not in the context of military equipment, but just in general, right? We talk about how do you create a VR headset or AR headset with the right weight distribution. And so one question is, why has no one just made a helmet, right? We've seen it in sci-fi movies and TV shows about VR headsets. You could distribute the batteries and the compute and all of the chips needed throughout the whole helmet, instead of putting it in front of your face or on the back of your head, or, in an external puck. It's something we just haven't seen anyone explore yet. And it sounds like Lucky wants to kind of be the first with this. And he's talking about how with the constraint of a helmet, instead of having to just be a visor, you can actually come up with a weight distribution solution that doesn't stress soldiers. But he talks about how they're going to do a lot of field testing for this. Anduril, as a company, has been doing constant field testing with all their equipment. We see recent marketing from them showing that they put their engineers out in the field with soldiers to say, we don't want you to be in some office 1,000 miles away building something. You've got to go into the field with these soldiers and see, do they like this? Is this useful? And it'll be very interesting to see what they come up with in the end.
Big thank you from Parmesan. So thank you for that in our audience out there. And I hope you understand the seriousness with which we deal with these subjects, and we understand that this is out of the tone of like everything else we do. This is speaking very frankly. I'm waiting on delivery of what the company terms a handset, and it's a model of a popular firearm amongst police in the United States, and it mounts to a Quest 3 controller. And you buy a subscription program to practice your aim with this tool at home. So I'm going to be testing that in the near future. We're also due to receive a blaster, both Don and I, and those are compatible. That the blaster is compatible with games today, but it's in the same region of area where you can see this market popping up for subscription-based programs that basically attach the headset to the subscription-based program. There was someone up earlier mentioning a hard hat that was distributed with Half-Life, or not Half-Life, with HoloLens headsets. And you can imagine that being the model for some business use cases going forward in a lot of verticals. I'm going to ship a subscription for 1 or 2 apps that give you training in a specific job. And it doesn't really matter what the headset is. It's just a plain HMD that connects to this program.
Yeah, a lot of people questioning the helmet idea, and we have uh, who is it here? Someone pointing out, headset historian pointing out that if you're already wearing a helmet, which the soldier is, right? You're already wearing a helmet. It kind of just makes sense to have this in a helmet form factor. Like it's not adding anything because you're already wearing a helmet. But I think what you see here in Lucky's announcement last week and in this interview is a lot of hubris potentially. You do see Palmer Luckey describing himself as the world's best head mounted display designer, saying this is going to be the best VR, AR, MR system ever. And you may question that. The one thing I would say though is look at what he did come up with back when he was at Oculus, right? I recently watched a video from a young person. I think they're like 18 or so, and they are a Quest owner, but they decided to buy an original Oculus Rift CV1, the 2016 model, and they put it on, and they said that the displays aside, right, because that's just what you could get back then. This was a headset that shocked him with how good it was. And anyone who's owned a Rift CV1 will know just how great that headset was, right? The ergonomics, all of the design, all of the first principles there were incredible. If you took a Rift CV1, added inside out tracking, and swapped out the displays for modern displays, it would be one of the best headsets on the market, right? It would be the PC VR headset of choice today. So Lucky has demonstrated like an incredible ability as a product person back when he was at Oculus. And I think if you look at Anduril's products, they are highly reviewed. They're being used in Ukraine right now, right? They talk about in this interview this loitering munition where there are areas that Russia has jamming equipment on. So they have radio frequency jamming, so you cannot remotely pilot a drone. But they have this Anduril loitering munition that flies into this area, autonomously identifies that this is a Russian surface-to-air missile system or a Russian artillery piece, and destroys it. And Ukraine has, you can read articles about Ukrainians talking about how this has just completely changed their ability. So I think we should expect great things here, but we'll have to see what they really come out with in the end.
So, gosh, I'm gonna take a deep breath here before I describe this. But David, you quoted it in your article, and I highly recommend you go read David Heaney's write up on this. I joked on a previous show. We have like 5 articles in the category of military. Now we've got 6 the week after, right? Like there's one more, and this is just one follow-up week. We will see if we'll see if that pace keeps up and whether it changes anything else we do and how we like present this type of news to you all relative to all the other sort of industry trends. But I like headsets historians comment in response to the hubris thing. That may also be for venture capitalists watching. They weirdly love that sort of stuff. Like that crypto lad that was playing League of Legends on calls. Of course, I think you're describing FTX and the disaster there, which is fantastic to compare and there. I think of it as a little bit more serious than that. The hubris, the seriousness. Is he not wrong? Right? Like, if you were Andrew Bosworth or Mark Zuckerberg, and you were making headsets, and you had hired billions and billions, you had spent that many billions of dollars, right? Not just on Palmer Luckey, and he walked away with however many billions it was, but you spent it on all these other headset designers who are making your headsets for you. And now Palmer Luckey is coming along and saying, sorry, Mark, you didn't hire the best.
Well, Palmer's going to argue that he's the best, right? And again, there is some evidence for that. If you go back to the Oculus days, if you look at his designs that he originally got John Carmack, he sent over to John Carmack, all of that happened. The Rift wasn't the only headset, right? Palmer Luckey back then, more than 10 years ago, on the order of 15 years ago, was building 270-degree field of view prototype headsets. And that's not the wrong number I'm saying, literally 270-degree. There was clearly some talent there. It's not a coincidence that this person has founded 2 multi-billion-dollar companies in a row. That's either the greatest luck streak ever, or there might be, some talent there. But again, we'll need to see what really comes out there. We'll need to see what product they come out with in the end and what soldiers say about EagleEye, because that's what's going to really matter, right? What does the warfighter think of this when it finally gets deployed, when it does get deployed?
I have to. We need to move on, but I encourage you to go read the article. And the reason I want you to go read the article is for a specific instance that David calls out of something that Lucky said in one of his interviews, and it was specifically talking about this instance of a hill. Imagine a hill in front of you, and you got two people coming up on opposite sides of the hill, both of them with guns. The guy on this side of the hill has a drone that he detaches from his shoulder, throws up into the air, and it's hovering 200 yards, 300 yards up there in the air, looking over the hill, and you wearing your headset see the outline of a human body coming up close to the ridge of the hill. So you're looking at there, and so you know, as this war fighter with a gun in your hands like this, you're already pointing your gun at the top of the hill because um, that changes warfare in a really, really fundamental way. If you're giving your soldier 2 seconds or 1 second of reaction time, you're also taking 1 second or 2 seconds of reaction time away from the other person. So if that person had a white flag in one hand instead of a gun, right? Can the drone up there identify whether it's a white flag in that hand or a gun? Is it good enough to do that? Is the information getting from the drone to your headset quickly enough to change that from being a white flag to a gun? And so when the person pops over the edge and you've got your gun pointed at this person because your X-ray vision has given you a 2 second lead over this situation, do you shoot first and ask questions later? All right, let's move on.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, the argument Lucky makes is that you'll get both. You'll get this synthesized AI view of, the target marked, as well as just a picture-in-picture view, right? You'll literally just have a little floating rectangle in front of you showing you the zoomed-in video footage from that drone on that person. But again, these are really serious topics that are very profound. And for the kind of the first party account, I really do recommend going and listening to this interview and kind of taking away your own thoughts from hearing this in the kind of holistic context of the way he's bringing it up.
Yep. Appreciate that. So let's move on, David. That's something we do at UploadVR. We always present the context as much as we possibly can. We don't remove it for those sound bites at every corner. I've worked with David for years now to make that the way we do things. Period. And I think it comes across, doesn't it? I hope it comes across. So thank you to our members for supporting that way of doing business. That's the way we do our writing. So let's move on here.
Yeah, let's talk about Quest's Horizon OS version 74. So I will quickly just run through the features here, what's changed, and then we can have a discussion of it. I think we're having some loading speed issues here, so you may not see the asset immediately. We'll see if we can get that sorted. So Horizon OS 74, Quest v74, brings web shortcuts in library. So if you're watching, you can see that here. You can create shortcuts to websites, and then they will open as these kind of minimalist full screen windows that don't have the normal browser interface. So you can make your own Spotify app, for example, here by just making a shortcut to the Spotify website. DisplayPort out to external displays. So you can take a USB-C cable that supports DisplayPort alt mode, connect it to your Quest headset, and then use a USB-C to DisplayPort adapter or USB-C to HDMI, or just a cable that's USB-C to HDMI or DisplayPort and output to an external monitor. So one group of people this will be really useful for is people demoing at trade shows, be it CES or SIGGRAPH. You want to do a standalone VR demo, you don't have to fight with the Wi-Fi anymore to cast. You can literally just DisplayPort out. That'll be super useful. Content creators will also find that helpful because you can pair that with a capture card and output just like you would from any other console. People that are making videos are very used to using this kind of setup with a capture card. The next one is improved wireless casting reliability. So if you're using Wi-Fi casting, this has been possible for years now, right? You can cast to the phone app, you can cast to the PC app, you can cast to a web browser, you can cast to any Google Cast supported TV device, like a Chromecast or any TV with Google Cast built in. They say they've dramatically improved the reliability of that one. They, a year ago, were going to remove it for a while to increase the reliability, and then a week or two later, because there was massive outcry, some of that helped by our article, they were like, okay, we'll just keep it in even though it's buggy. And it looks like they've actually come up now with that update that improves the core reliability. So they claim casting your Quest is going to no longer be a buggy mess now. Next one, the system menu and Quest Link. It's not 100% clear what they mean by this, but today, Quest Link, the feature that turns your Quest headset into a PC VR headset, doesn't let you access the Quest menu. It's the only experience on Quest where you don't get that. Instead, you have that Rift dash. This text in this update makes it sound like it says includes system tray support, giving quick access to device status and quick actions while MetaQuest Link is running in the background. Makes it sound like they're getting rid of the Rift dash and going on to the Quest system bar, but we'll have to see whether that is true in practice. For now, we just have what they're saying. The next one, they said minimized 2D apps are now shown above the universal menu, making it easy to see which applications are still open. So you have these 3 apps open. They're saying whatever you've minimized will be shown above here somewhere. They haven't shown a screenshot. They haven't shown what this is going to look like. We'll have to see. The next one, seamless multitasking is no longer experimental. It's Ian's favorite feature. It's being able to keep these 2D windows still open while you're inside a VR app and interacting with that app. So you're still in your game playing. The example we gave in our article at the time was, you're playing Demio and you have Netflix or YouTube open while you're playing the game. That was experimental. Now they say it's rolling out as non-experimental. Multi-room space setup. They now say if you're doing your mixed reality scene mesh setup, or you create that 3D environment mesh, if you walk around your whole house, it'll work. It'll create a separate 3D mesh for each room. Travel detection, travel mode, Quest headsets have it. Vision Pro's had it since launch, Quest headsets since last year. It makes your tracking work in a moving vehicle. They now say that it will detect when you need to use it and give you a pop-up. That's been on Vision Pro for a long time. If you didn't know this feature existed and you're just trying to use your Quest on a train or a plane, now it'll kind of tell you need to turn on travel mode. Okay. The next one, these ones are pretty much very, very minor. They say they've improved night display for pass-through. So night display, it's the feature that reduces blue light. They say it works better now for mixed reality stuff with pass-through. Spatial audio for 2D calling apps, WhatsApp, etc. The audio will now sound like it's coming out of the 2D app itself. That's been a thing for normal 2D windows like Spotify and Netflix. Now they say it will support VoIP apps as well. Final one, app crash detection and reporting. It'll now, they say the OS will now elegantly handle when an app crashes and bring up a window where you can report that presumably to the developer. That's Quest V74.
Yeah, so John Burkbeck saying, when I've got 30 plus people in headsets in a room, I can just plug in a cable with someone who's stuck. Yep, that's the idea there, and it sounds phenomenal. We're gonna be a game changer for so many scenarios. There's big inroads that need to be made to improve this functionality across the board, across all headsets. So these are big things, and I love David pointing out multitasking as my favorite feature. David, right, is Meta has had to put multitasking on top of Android, a platform they cannot control, that they have no say over what happens to that functionality over the long term. Meanwhile, you have Vision OS that is architected for multitasking from the launch of the very first device.
But only in the shared space.
Was that only in the shared space? Yeah. And totally fair. Yeah. All right. So there's this shared space category of apps that allow multitasking, and a bunch of others don't on the Apple Vision Pro, right?
Yeah, that's the funny thing, right? If we were to port this app to Vision Pro, you wouldn't be able to open Safari inside it because it's a full space app, right?
Yeah.
So it really is crazy that what Meta's done is actually deliver a multitasking experience that is in some ways for 2D windows superior to Vision OS because it's a brute force method, right? It doesn't do depth testing. It just overlays. It's crude. It's inelegant in some ways, and I'm sure some Apple engineers might scoff at the way it works. Oh, you're just literally rendering it on top of the VR app. How dare you? But at the end of the day, it gives users a lot of, in the Carmackian term, value, user value. You love it. Loads of people love it, even though it's crude. Apple won't do it because they want to have full rendering control to make that possible.
Yeah, and that full rendering control to make that possible, like it's so fascinating. So one of the things, Andrew, we talked about it on the show yesterday. We'll get into it on Tuesday, as mentioned with the game cast. But he talked about the idea of like VR being full screen mode equivalent, I think, on a mixed reality headset. Which was an interesting concept to think of them as two modes of the same content, right? Like you either want to go full screen and just block out the real world entirely, or you want to be with your mixed reality content. It's a very interesting idea.
Yeah, the problem is the analogy doesn't quite hold, right? Because you're not limited to one screen. You have this entire reality in front of you, right? So we have a commenter here saying that, let me try and find this comment. Marcellus Wilson saying, I am sculpting a character now while watching the show using multitasking, right? So in theory, if you want to watch Netflix, you want to watch VR download on YouTube, you want to do these things while you're in it. Meta is just saying, go and do it, even if it isn't perfect, right? Because that has to be stressed. If you're in an app, in this screenshot, this person is in VR chat, right? And if they use their hands in VR chat, then when they reach up, even if their hands should be in front of this window, it will be rendered behind, right? There's no like advanced compositing being done here. It's really, really crude. It's just, it's an overlay in the crudest sense of the word. So there is all of those kind of limitations here, but it works, right? It works. People like it. And I think it's one of the biggest feature requests for Vision OS 3, ironically.
Well, yeah, so it's interesting to have this back and forth with David. And the reason I was focusing, and I think David might have popped out of there for a second and come back. One of the things that I wonder about is, okay, we go a year forward, and I want a video call with four friends. I want my four friends to get together for a couch co-op session of some Nintendo game, and we're in four different parts of the United States. And it's playing inside my headset. How does the headset handle four photorealistic avatars, plus the shared window that we all want to see at the same time, plus the input that the four of us are all trying to apply to that window to play the game at the same time and have no latency between us, and then all the other things that I've got in addition to that basic content, right? I'm not only going to be playing that game with my friends, I'm also going to be having five other windows floating around me as well.
So that you can do today in Vision OS with Steam Link, right? You can do that today.
James was reminding me to bring something up there in the comments. Sorry, David, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just saying what you're describing you can do today, because you're talking about just having, these are different things, right? Having other avatars around you and having shared 2D screens. Vision OS does that really, really, really well, right? And Quest doesn't, right? You cannot, there is no like screen sharing like that in Quest today, other than for YouTube. They do have co-watching for one app, YouTube. But then what Vision OS doesn't do is, if you wanted to be in VR chat with all your friends and do this, or in some sort of other VR immersive multiplayer app, then that's the issue, that you can't bring it up there. It's nuanced and complicated.
If you guys want to talk about a true moment of presence here, how do you reach full presence in VR? All right. He asked the question that John Birkbeck just asked. I'm wondering if I can use Ian's DisplayPort in with the right cables to plug into other people's Quests using a Quest to see their view, a bit cyborg. So in the studio here, I wondered, hypothetically, could I plug in my view to David's headset here? Forgetting, of course, in that instant that you're physically 2,000 miles or like 3,000 miles away from me or something.
So to directly answer that question, you would need a capture card, because Quest doesn't support DisplayPort in. You would need a capture card, but if you can get one of those for $30, right? So you could mirror your view using DisplayPort out, added in V74, to someone's Quest headset, where they use the MetaQuest HDMI link app to take DisplayPort in, and then you would see their view in front.
We weren't supposed to make the human centipede real, okay, people? We weren't supposed to. All right. And I like Jack also bringing up the old Game Boy link. There was the second USB port on the Switch 2, which I imagine could be used for that exact purpose. And man, you start speaking right to my heart right there. I have I have the stupidest product I've ever spent money on hanging from a wall. It's called a Thumbie. It's called a Thumbie, and it has it's a playable version of Tetris that is this big. It's got a button on it and like the little D-pad, I think, and it's literally this large. But the thing is, you take like a modified micro USB cable. It's like it looks like micro USB, but it's different. You plug it into the bottom of the Thumbie. You get another Thumbie. You plug it in over here to the other end of this micro USB to micro USB cable, and now you're playing two-player Tetris on the size of a thumb. The reason I'm obsessed with it is because it's an example of open source computing. It's like an open source version of Tetris that they've installed on this. That the hardware itself is open source, and then ultimately this wire that you just buy, which is a dumbed down micro USB, is all open source. Where like the market doesn't like open source like connectivity, like it wants to make money off of us connecting instead.
So another thing you could do with this DisplayPort out functionality that's just been added that we were talking about internally at UploadVR is that theoretically you could get a small portable monitor, right? So if you're not familiar, on Amazon for $50 or $100, you can get a little portable monitor. And if you could get one small enough, you could attach it to the front of the headset and then use DisplayPort out. And what you would essentially get then is a mirror. So not the Vision Pro idea of seeing into the headset, but instead seeing out. So because you're seeing what the person is seeing, so it would be almost as if the front was a reflective mirror. And now, of course, you could also achieve that by just making the front of a headset and a mirror. Another thing you could do is attach the same display to the rear, to the back where you have the back strap on an Elite strap, for example. And then you would see through the person's head, right? Because you'd be seeing their first person view, but from the back. So it would be as if the person's head had an invisible rectangle on the back of it.
Predator cam, yep. From the movie Predator, not another kind, I guess, because that's how creepy that would be in real life. Sorry for that. The example that I kept thinking of was The Fifth Element, with the mugger trying to get Corbin Dallas's stuff from inside his apartment. And if you recall that movie, he comes up to the eye hole of his apartment and tilts his head like this to show a picture of the hallway completely flat. You can imagine the same, imagine the display there showing you a retina level resolution of the hallway. And yeah, you just go do that and then give me all the cash. All right. Was that a good impression? All right. Sorry. That was, I was inviting Kyle into my avatar here for a second with that.
So before we move on from V74, I want to note a comment from Mastoris Mars, who says, Meta updates, don't know when you'll get it, don't know when you'll even get in the update notes, don't know when you'll get those missing features in the future. And this is a really good point. We now are careful in our articles to say that for Meta updates, including V74, there's no guarantee that once it's released that you will get it anytime soon, right? They roll out these updates. It could take a day, it could take 2 days, it could take 2 weeks. And worse than that, you don't even know if you're going to get all of the features when that update does roll out to you, because they do server-side sub-updates where they roll out a feature and it one day will just activate on your headset with no indication that there was any update. And so, for example, I just got V74, but in it, there were some features from V71 that were announced back then that I just got activated. So Meta updates are a mess. They are not like, could you imagine any other company doing this, right? Could you imagine an iOS update from, Apple saying that there's a new feature and you just randomly don't get it, or you don't even know when you're getting the update and it's completely unrelated, right? Nobody else does this. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know any of my other devices that work like this. On any of my other devices, I have a firmware update, a system software update. It has some features. I install the update and I get those features. But on Meta Quest headsets, that's not the case. And it's really, really weird. And it's, I guess it's the price for Meta's different development strategy, right? Because with these other companies, you typically get major features once a year in a giant bundle, whereas Meta is doing almost monthly. They usually take like a break for January, for holiday rest. Almost monthly feature updates where you're getting, like, we have to be fair to Meta, the pace of updates you get on a Quest headset is beyond any other device. Quest 1 launched without hand tracking and depth correct pass through. And then launched without hand tracking, depth correct pass through, or PC VR support. And by the end of that headset's life, it had all three and a shit ton of other features. Quest 2 also saw dramatic upgrades throughout its lifetime, right? Significant feature updates that made it a completely different device in some ways. Literally, like the GPU frequency was increased multiple times to the point where it was a solid 30% more powerful by the end of its lifetime. I see Ian in the comments here saying that he's lost power. So yeah, it's a really strange thing. Also, they skip versions randomly, right? Like Apple doesn't go from iOS, 15 to 17, but Mr. Runchlam in the comments is saying that they're still on V. Sorry about that, folks. We should be back live now. You should be able to hear me. So if you didn't hear the last thing I was saying, it was basically that Meta doesn't know how to count. The last version was V72, and now we're on to V74, but there was no V73. So don't worry that you're too far back in the past if you're on V73. That's completely fine. Or if you're on V72, because there was no V73. Ian's back now. Are we ready to talk about PlayStation VR2 hand tracking?
Yeah, this was a cool one from you, David. I'm at battery 4%, so it appears to be going up now. Interesting how it does it like 10 watts when it first charges up, and then it immediately after it comes back online, it goes up to a very high output coming back. But I didn't get any warning there. I went on my battery getting lower. Maybe I was just so distracted by the crazy conversation we had today. David, I appreciated you breaking this down here. There's a lot of terminology to understand when you're talking about the way hand tracking can fail you. Over on Gamescast, we spent a lot of time with Andrew at Alchemy, who deals with this in and out on a daily basis with dimensional double shift and stuff like that. But the way hand tracking fails is a really hard area to talk about. So I'm really appreciative of you trying to break this down for a community out there of just let's raise the conversation here a little bit about how we talk about the quality of hand tracking.
Yeah, so in December, out of nowhere, Sony announced at a trade show, still has not announced publicly in any kind of press release or any statement or video, that PlayStation VR2 now supports hand tracking. And Waltz of the Wizard was the first game to add support for it last week. So Waltz of the Wizard is also available on Quest. It was one of the first games to add hand tracking for the original Oculus Quest all the way back in early 2020. So they were first there. I mean, one of the first, and they're the first here. And now it offers a great point of comparison in how is the hand tracking on Sony's PlayStation VR2 versus on Meta's Quest 3. Now, there's one important nuance to note in this comparison, and we hinted at this at the start, but let's really get into it. So that's that on PlayStation VR2, the hand tracking always runs at 60 hertz, 60 times per second. The camera samples the grayscale camera images to do the hand tracking algorithm. They're 60 times per second. On Quest, by comparison, there are two modes. By default, Quest hand tracking is 30 hertz. So that's what we're actually using right now. 30 times per second, 30 hertz hand tracking. And you can see it's actually still remarkably responsive. But it does mean that there are a couple of limitations, right? So one of them you'll note is there's overshoot. If I do a really fast hand motion, you'll notice that maybe you can't even see it, but you'll notice that my hands bounce as I clap, right? They don't come to a complete standstill. They bounce. As in what happens is they overshoot and then come back because what it has to rely more on prediction. You have fewer frames per second, so you're predicting further into the future. All systems, all tracking systems use prediction, be it your headset of all kinds, lighthouse tracking, inside-out tracking, they all use prediction. But the more real samples you get from the optical system, the less prediction you have to do. Now, I say two modes because there is a fast motion mode on Quest that is 60 hertz or 50 in certain regions where your lights are at 50 hertz. So it's 60 or 50 hertz, the same as PlayStation VR2. But there are a couple of trade-offs here. The first trade-off is for older headsets. So for Quest 2, using fast motion mode for hand tracking reduces the CPU frequency, the GPU frequency, the maximum GPU frequency that you can do. That's for thermal reasons, most likely, because it's drawing in thermal and energy reasons. On Quest Pro, you can't use fast motion mode for hand tracking alongside eye tracking or face tracking. And Waltz of the Wizard does use eye tracking on Quest Pro, just as it uses it on PlayStation VR2 for gameplay features, right? There's things where you close your eyes and the skull guy reacts in a certain way, and they use it for like targeting and things like that. So for older Quest headsets, fast motion mode comes with these trade-offs that means that it's really not practical. But those limitations don't apply to Quest 3 and 3S. But there is still another limitation that increases the jitter and reduces the accuracy. So to do this 60 times per second hand tracking algorithm on Quest headsets seems to use a slightly less powerful model so that they can run it twice as fast, that is a little bit less accurate and a little bit more jittery, right? So PlayStation VR2, keep in mind, is being driven by a PlayStation 5, so it's got hundreds of watts of energy to draw from your main supply. Quest is trying to do absolutely everything on less than 15 watts. So there are limitations here of what kind of algorithms you can run. That said, I tried fast motion mode in Meta's Move Fast demo, as well as XR Workout, which uses it, and found that the accuracy and jitter are pretty similar to PlayStation VR2. So I'm not sure whether Alden Dynamics is just had different results in their lighting. They clearly do. They claim that it wasn't accurate enough for them to do some of the gesture recognition, but I find it was good, right? It's great. But let's talk about the comparison of this in game, right? So for whatever reason, Alden Dynamics is using the default Quest hand tracking and the default PlayStation VR2 hand tracking. So in Waltz of the Wizard, I loaded it up on both headsets. I was going back to back within space of seconds, exact same lighting conditions, exact same room, exact same angle, the same hands, obviously. Here's what I saw. So I found that both headsets, despite the fact that one is running twice the rate, had similar latency. So I found that PlayStation VR2 at 60 hertz has slightly better hand motion latency. So you're moving your hand and how long it takes to see that represented. But I found that Quest, even though it's at 30 hertz, actually has better finger latency. So when I curl my finger, I'm seeing that happen slightly faster on Quest. But these differences in latency were so small that in my article, which you should go read on UploadVR.com, I considered latency a draw. So latency is a draw, okay? One thing where PlayStation VR2 wins handily is fast motion, again, because it's at 60 hertz. So when you're moving your hand like this and doing really, really fast motions and all that kind of stuff, it handles it slightly better on PSVR 2 than it does on Quest. You're getting less of these motions kept. You can kind of see the hand cut out sometimes. But again, Quest holds up remarkably well. But even at 30 hertz, there are some things that Quest was just better at. Firstly, less jitter. When you hold your hands completely still, there's a really noticeable jitter there on PlayStation VR 2, at least in my lighting condition, that I don't see on Quest. The other thing is superior accuracy. when I'm moving my fingers, they are represented more realistically on Quest. One thing that I kept finding on PlayStation VR2 was that it got my finger curl direction wrong. So if I was curling my fingers inwards like this, sometimes it would think I was curling them outwards. So it would come out, you can't even do it, right? It's a movement that's kind of unnatural. My fingers can't curl outwards, but it was thinking sometimes that my fingers were curling backwards in ways that at least my hands can't do. And then it would figure out, oh, I'm doing this completely wrong, and instantly snap into a curled position. And I actually got footage of that because it happened all the time. I got footage of that in the article. So that was an issue. The other thing that Quest does far, far better is hand overlap. So if I'm doing two-handed interactions, this gesture is as rude as it is in some contexts. It's an interesting hand tracking test, right? Whether your hand tracking system can handle it. If you're overlapping your hands, I'm bringing my hands behind each other. It's not perfect on Quest. There's always going to be an issue like here, right, where your hand is behind another hand. But in terms of how bad does it get and how quickly does it recover on the other side, Quest was far and away better. The last thing that Quest is better at, which Onakazi is asking about in the comment, is the launching UX. So this is the last thing. So on PlayStation VR2, the system, the interface, the menus do not support hand tracking. VR controllers or the DualShock, launch the game, put the controller down, and pick your hands up. And if you're in like an environment where you've got stuff on your table, that means you're going to toggle pass through on and off because I don't want to knock stuff over, right? I don't want to knock a vase over or something. So it's frictionful. It's annoying. On Quest, I just put the headset on. Don't even have to have controllers. My controllers could have been thrown out the window. I launch Waltz of the Wizard and I'm in. So this is I recommend reading my article for the nuances here. The thing we have to note is that Meta's hand tracking has been around for almost 5 years now. They're on version 2.3, and PlayStation VR2's hand tracking arrived in December. So we will keep a really close eye throughout the rest of the year for firmware updates from Sony that may dramatically improve the hand tracking, because this is version 1 for Sony and version 2.3 for Meta.
Well, here's the question, David. It's free real estate. It's free VR real estate saying here. Sony giving us hand tracking before selling us the Sense controllers separately. I'm going to ask, how many PlayStation VR2 headsets do you think Sony would sell if Gran Turismo 7 ran on PC and Mac?
Well, people wouldn't need to buy a PlayStation VR2. They could run it on a Quest, right? It's not, the whole point is if it's on PC or you can run any headset.
My point is, why wouldn't Sony put that game on PC at this point?
Well, they could. We've seen them bring a lot of these PlayStation titles to PC over time. I think when it comes to VR, there's probably the market size isn't big enough to make it worth it, is the reality, right? Just the same reason that traditional VR games, a lot of them are only on Quest. The reason that not flat screen games don't come to PC VR, the market size I don't think is big enough, and there's a lot of competition, right? Gran Turismo 7 is, as far as I'm aware, the only serious racing sim available on PlayStation VR. On PC, it would be competing with Project Cars, Assetto Corsa, Competizone, iRacing, all of those things. It's probably just a financial question. Some spread where has the numbers of when it becomes worth it to them.
Yeah, and here's where I'm going with that is, okay, VR headsets need, in my view, to have the best hand tracking possible, right? Like that's when we do our future VR headset comparisons, David is kind of building out, in my view, with the way he's writing about this, he's building out a place where he can analyze all future VR headsets according to the guidelines he's setting out today. So the next update to Sony, he's going to be able to say, it was better than this and worse than this, right? Like we've got markers now. We can actually say, this is the quality of hand tracking going forward because we expect it in practically all VR headsets going forward. In my view, you've got to decide that. That's going to be one spec of future headsets. What is the quality of hand tracking? Another spec, though, is going to be what is the quality of object tracking? And you need most people at home who are in the market for a VR headset. Like the reason they will go buy a VR headset is because of that one tracked object and what that one tracked object means to them. I talked about earlier in the show, that tracked object being a Quest 3 controller that gets stuffed into a handset modeled after a real physical gun. But you could easily imagine that tracked object being a golf club, a baseball bat, a keyboard of both kinds, okay? A keyboard that's connected to a computer or a musical keyboard. And this is my opportunity to get into the GarageBand thing that James reminded me of. Is there something you want to say there first, David?
No, I just want to say keyboard tracking exists today on
Yep.
Quest and on Apple Vision Pro. That's not a hypothetical. And it suggests that we may see more tracked objects over time. I think it probably is going to take the next generation of headsets with more NPU overhead, but tracked objects are something that it's not impossible, but I don't think the hardware of today is quite ready for real-time custom object tracking of moving objects.
Yeah, all right. So there's where I'm going. You're right, David, that it's already there. But where we're going with this is like if you go down the hierarchy of the things the computer vision on your headset needs to do for you, number one, head tracking, right? Make you comfortable 100% of the time, even when you're flying down a train. Like you're in a train and the headset thinks you're actually like a Superman and flying down it needs to disregard that and let you be on the train, right? That's one task of computer vision. So that's the very first thing the headsets need to do. Right below that is the hand tracking. And right below that is this object tracking. And right now, Meta and Apple and Google, for that matter, are all learning like how much of this processor overhead do we have to reserve for each of those tasks, in addition to all the other tasks that this headset needs to accomplish. The GarageBand example that I need to bring up. On an Apple Vision Pro right now, you cannot go and install the GarageBand iPad app. So even though the iPad versions of many apps or phone versions of many apps are available on the Apple Vision Pro, you can't go get GarageBand. So someone has specifically clicked at Apple, let's not allow you to click GarageBand in the open air. James and I had a conversation about GarageBand, and I asked him to estimate when he thinks we'll see GarageBand make it to Vision Pro or Vision headsets. And he was like, maybe next year. And I was like, that's a reasonable timeline to think about it. And all I want to say is let's imagine GarageBand. What does it need to do in a Vision headset for you? And I'm going to argue all it needs to do is track one object, and that is a keyboard. It should be able to look at every piano in the world and size the keys right to that piano. And if you get that singular object right, every music class in the world changes overnight. One object.
Yeah, so until you said every keyboard in the world, I was going to say you could do that today, right? Because Apple Vision Pro does have static object tracking. But what you have to do to get that to work is you have to provide a 3D model that is identical to the object. So what we see, the use case for this mostly is businesses, right? So training, for example, on medical equipment. We've seen apps that exist right now in Vision OS. And you actually have to bake a model into the app, and it takes like 6 hours on a Mac. And you actually bake that 3D model into like a computer vision model that Apple, works out all of the technical aspects of making. So theoretically, if you were building what you were describing for one model of keyboard, you could do it tomorrow, right? You could just bake a 3D model of that keyboard into this app, and then it would track it and perfectly. And again, this is static object tracking. It updates at a couple of frames per second. It's not for motion, but it would work. The difficulty is, how do you create a generic model that tracks any kind of keyboard in existence? Maybe you could do it by keys, right? Maybe you could provide a 3D model of just the keys, but they're all different sizes, right? That's where things get really complicated, because this is also to scale as well as size. That's complicated. But theoretically, what you could do once you get pass-through access for developers is people can write their own computer vision models specifically for this, right? So when Quest gets its pass-through API in a couple of months or whenever that's coming, when Android XR launches, you can do that. As you can build your own computer vision model and do that.
I like It's Free Real Estate saying, I just channel my own negative energy into the controllers to power them. I mean, that is how the controllers in the future will be powered, because they won't have power. So I want to give this example. So I was Steinway, I think, is the piano company. I'm in New York, as I mentioned at the beginning of each episode. And I was walking down downtown New York near Times Square or near Broadway, and I saw they had a physical piano location for Steinway. They've got this showroom that's crazy. It was closed when I was walking through it, but you can actually go into a physical place and buy a grand piano here in New York. And it's like, as my partner and I were walking by that, it's like, what's the market for that? That's crazy to think that there's still like how many units do they need to sell per week in order to afford that kind of real estate on Broadway for a piano purchase? Now imagine you go into that store after you're showing on Broadway, right? You've just been blown away by the power of music, by the best performers in the world. And then you go down the street to this piano store, and inside there is a concierge person who invites you to put on a VR headset and sit down at one of the pianos. And by the time, after you sit down at one of the pianos, and they teaches you while you're sitting there how to tap out the basics of a song. Would that sell more pianos? This old thing that everyone kind of forgets? I think it would, and I think that that's true for a lot of verticals.
I think you can establish the piano test for headsets and operating systems. How well does it handle this piano training use case? I think that would saying they hate the AA batteries, but other commenters are pointing out you can get replaceable batteries, you can get charging docks. Meta sells a charging dock for the touch controllers that comes with replaceable batteries. It's like this really minimalist thing, just big enough to dock your controllers on. That's what I use. I haven't replaced controller batteries in years, right? You just put them on the dock when you're finished, and I've never thought about controller batteries as a concept ever since.
Fast Lawyer, I appreciate the comment and I get it. You can just put a tablet on the piano and do the same thing. I'm not really sold on this use case. I get the concept and you can get some of the way there, but you're not applying the mechanics of Beat Saber to the model in your head for what happens there. I did this myself in the Snapchat Spectacles glasses that's shipping now on a monthly payment plan. Um, they had already auto synced the keyboard up for me before I came to the glasses. This needs to be a software feature that does that. But I came over and I watched the bars, the square, the little rectangles slide right over my key, just like Piano Vision and just like a number of apps on Quest to do. And I watch it slide right over. And that's the moment I tapped the key. And I watched it and I started tapping it out. And I'm doing one finger each, but I'm getting from zero to tapping out a song way, way, way quicker than I could if I was like this. That's the difference. It's night and day.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I see the comment that you're referring to saying that you're not sold on this. There are so many things in VR and mixed reality that if you haven't tried it, it maybe doesn't make sense. But think about what you might have thought before you'd ever even tried VR, right? Of how I don't really get that. Is that really the right thing for me? Some of this you just have to try to understand. And yeah, seeing the keys overlaid, seeing your hands tracked and showing how your fingers need to move slightly differently to hit the right chord, all of that it's a completely different ball game to having a tablet above the piano. There's another comment here I want to address. Denver Miller saying those docks don't work with grip covers. Boy, do I have the product for you. It sounds like I'm promoting it. I'm not. I'm just reporting on it. Bobo VR came out with exactly what you're looking for. A Quest dock that supports their grips and does wireless charging with grips. So go and look at the Bobo VR D3. This is a monster of a charging dock. This is for real VR enthusiasts who want to play for long sessions. You get the dock to put the external battery in the back, so you can swap it out. You get a wireless charging for your controllers that support grips, as well as wireless charging for the Quest 3. So yeah, there you go. There's a product right there that does exactly that.
See, and I feel like that's the wrong direction overall because of this fact that I want to mount the controllers into other objects to track them instead, and that means that they don't fit on the charging stands anymore. But I'm in the minority right there. That most people would be served very well by this idea.
Yeah, I think Most people aren't. I mean, people do that with like Golf Plus, and some people do it for onward and contractors. You know, you have these like golf clubs you slide your controllers into. But I think it's fairly niche and specific to those. Most people are just using the controllers freeform.
I think you're right, but I guess my argument here is I believe you add up all of those verticals, you stack them all up individually, all the subscriptions that people would pay for, and all that one object, right? It's not, people aren't expert shooters, expert firefighters, expert, like they don't do all of the things that they go to role play in VR. They don't do all of those things in the real world at the same degree of accuracy or training. But there is usually one thing that most people are like, that's my love, like that's my hobby lifelong. And those are the verticals that I'm starting imagining VR coming for in various capacities. That like they just can't because of various software layers blocking them. You ready to move on?
Yeah, one last comment here. Scratch Winter saying, as a piano player, I can tell you that that will not sell pianos. I don't personally think it will sell pianos. What I do think it will do is convince more people to learn piano, right? Because a lot of family homes will have a piano anyway. And if someone else in the family plays, there's two options here. You can either go and pay for lessons and take the time to, slot into someone specific time slot of, they either come over to your home or you go to their home. That's a big commitment. Imagine having the same capability of a tutor, except it's an app you download for $3 on an app store. And suddenly you put your glasses on or your headset on or whatever it is, and you get that same level of guidance you would get from a piano teacher and beyond, because it's tracking your hands, it's showing you the right keys lit up, it's guiding you through the song. There are so many opportunities to learn things. Guitar as well, right? Once you can track guitar, a guitar combined with really, really good hand tracking, perhaps even with the neural input wristband, so you have perfect hand tracking, guiding you through how to play guitar without having to go through the kind of traditional methods. There's a lot of things in VR. There's the potential for this. We often talk about like what will happen once developers get the pass-through API and can build their own custom computer vision models. Training is a really good example. Cooking, for example. Imagine learning to cook on a future, sleeker mixed reality headset with open periphery, to be clear, not today's headsets. I'm talking about your open periphery is clear. You got really, really clear pass through. It's comfortable. By seeing like arrows pointing you to different areas of the kitchen and showing you floating in front of you how, what ingredients you need and where to put them and how far along you are today. Sure, you can do this in a limited way today by putting your tablet in the corner of the kitchen and craning your neck over and seeing like, what does that say over there? What's the next step? Let me go and take my grubby hands covered in flour and scroll down that tablet. Or you can imagine a future where all of this is spatialized and object aware with all of the equipment in your kitchen. The possibilities for the kind of utility and training and just learning and individual skills apps with mixed reality headsets and eventually AR glasses is immense. And we barely even scratch the surface.
Haven't even begun, right? Like that's the thing that I feel like everyone is missing about the market. And I appreciate the nuanced conversation happening on my scenario of why I wouldn't sell pianos. And I think people are picking apart my scenario. And I like they point out that those pianos may cost $100,000 plus, true grand pianos. Imagine the scenario that, like, to take my scenario a little bit further and defend it. Okay, you've got a couple, a very well-off couple, coming into a piano location with a 10-year-old in tow, and this couple has never had the space for a piano in their life. Yet the husband was a classically trained pianist and played for 30 years back in the day, and just has not had any of the time, place. There's been no place in their lives to pass that love of piano on to their child. He's got a different job. He's maybe a surgeon or something, right? So he goes and sits at the piano and starts bringing back all his old memories. He's like, oh, the feel of this piano is fantastic. This is exactly the sound and the feel that I would love as a pianist. But that's not the way they sell the piano. The way they sell the piano is the 10-year-old kid of those two couples who's never been taught a moment of piano in their lives. The salesperson goes, hey, do you want to would you like to see if we could give our little friend here about a quick VR training lesson on the piano and see if they like it? And so now the two parents take a step back, and the kid sits at the piano and starts tapping out the keys exactly like the virtual AI assistant in their AI heads in their VR headset tells them to do. And the parents watch the kid playing the piano exactly like they should have back at home. And boom, okay, where do I sign? Where do I spend my pension fund?
Yeah, some great suggestions in the comments here for use cases of the idea we're talking about here. Object tracking aware, mixed reality, and AR is car repairs, right? So you can imagine combine this concept with the multimodal AI. You open the hood of your car, you've no idea what's gone wrong. The system is able to use computer vision to analyze what's gone wrong and overlay arrows and instructions and step by step tell you how to fix your car.
Mm-hmm.
Another great example I'm seeing here in the comment is the idea of installing furniture, right? Instead of flipping through that IKEA manual, you see a transparent sort of layout of what the furniture is going to look like with each piece. And as you fill them in, that transparency disappears, and you hear like a ding and a pop as it all comes into play step by step. Again, we really need to clarify that none of this is possible today because these systems don't give developers camera access, and their built-in computer vision ability developers are able to do with this. But I do think we're going to have to move on to the next topic.
Yeah, we're going to cover this again and again. And I love that we've gone through both examples, right? The most on the ground example, car repair, and I went with the most luxurious example. There are people, we'll have more examples of this. I'm already lining up demos of things that exemplify this idea, right? There's going to be an argument made to be in the future, like, why didn't you do the virtual walkthrough before you paid the money? Okay. Like, that's right now it's an absurd it's only something you do rarely, right? If you can't afford a trip across the United States, maybe do the virtual walkthrough of your apartment before you rent it in the United States. Like, that is happening in plenty of times, but it's still the outlier, right? What we're talking about is it becoming everyday commonplace stuff. So let's move on. Yeah, what do we got? Horizon Worlds now?
Yeah, we're going to talk about Horizon Worlds. So we have one small Horizon Worlds story, and then we'll get into the big story. So the relatively small one is that it now has fantastical avatars, including Captain America. So they started rolling these out over winter, and they're now broadly rolled out for everyone. One of the biggest criticisms of Horizon Worlds by kind of traditional VR enthusiasts has been its focus on humanoid avatars, not just humanoid, but human. And what a lot of VR enthusiasts particularly enjoy doing in VR chat, for example, is inhabiting non-human characters and sometimes even non-humanoid characters. So Horizon Worlds isn't going all the way to non-humanoid, but they are now exploring non-human. They had these
Cowards.
Sorry?
I was just calling meta cowards for not going full fantastical.
Yeah, so I guess one step at a time, and they do. The avatar rigs and all of the systems in this are designed around humanoid, for example. But these are kind of skins that you wear. They don't replace your avatar. They're kind of more skins you wear. This is only in Horizon Worlds. So if you popped into this studio or into another app that uses meta avatars, or even home, you wouldn't have them. But the kind of flagship news here is that they've secured their first major kind of licensing deal for a fantastical avatar. And that is for the Sam Wilson Captain America, the new Captain America. So to unlock this, you have to travel through a portal in Horizon Central 5 times. So you join into a world from Horizon Central 5 times, and then you get to inhabit Captain America. So the idea here is that they are going to kind of try and secure more famous IPs over time. Their hope is that a big movie comes out just like this, and you can be that person in Horizon Worlds by inhabiting the skin. And then the real question for a lot of VR enthusiasts will be, do we get to make our own fantastical avatars? Will there be a way to create those? And for now, the answer is no. These are only coming from Meta.
People in the comments are telling me to go see Captain America 4, saying it's great. I had to cancel my tickets because the Alamo Draft House in New York is on strike. So my favorite theater here, chain here in New York is those people are out picketing trying to get better wages, and Captain America is a casualty here of that situation for me. But I do want to I do appreciate the commenters out there talking about their weirdest fantastical avatars that they would love to embody, um, and the ones that Meta doesn't quite allow just yet. Um, yeah, it looks suspiciously like a model from Disney Infinity. I do get that vibe. I get the Disney Infinity vibe from these two. Yeah.
Yeah, we have our Don Hopper VR gamer dude in the comments saying they really wish Meta would allow like completely custom avatars like VR chat does, where you can kind of make them and upload them. Um, yeah, I think that a lot of VR enthusiasts do want that, but that doesn't seem to be what they're doing yet. I think yeah, this is obviously a trial. It'll be interesting to see, can they get other like big Disney IPs? Is there that world of Ready Player One that people are talking about in the comments? One of the huge appeals of that world was that people were walking around with all of these licensed characters from their favorite IPs from the last 40 years, and you would imagine that any winning metaverse is going to have that, right? It's a huge aspect of Fortnite as well. It's one of their huge areas. Everything from, I think, Family Guy to any IP you can imagine is in Fortnite today, right?
People are talking about piracy and the licensing deals, and honestly, like I don't know. What bugs me, David, is like the scattershot. I saw people using the term scattershot in the comments to describe Meta's strategies. They often do A/B tests, but the problem that always happens that looking back at the A/B tests that Meta has done, whenever they run those A/B tests, it's always like we're actually A/B testing this specific instantiation of this specific idea, and it fails compared to this specific, version of this idea, right? Like Rift S versus Go, or was it no Rift S versus Quest was one of the original A/B tests there, and just they had to do that A/B test, but like the Rift S wasn't the best PC VR headset that you could possibly put on the market at that time. It was just the one that they could get at that same price.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people in the comments here point out the issue with completely custom model uploads. Firstly, adult content, right? How do you stop people from making things that are deeply inappropriate, as well as copyright infringement? How do you stop people from, just ripping off IPs? And let's be honest, a lot of VR chat avatars and worlds are copyright infringing, right? And that's okay for a small company. But if VR chat was to get 10 times bigger, some of these content holders, these big entertainment companies, would start throwing lawsuits in here. Let's be real. And if somebody acquired VR chat, oftentimes people wonder, why doesn't Meta acquire VR chat? Why don't other people? Because you don't just get to have all of that, illegal freedom and owned by a big company. As soon as a Microsoft, a Meta, an Apple owns a company like VRChat, you're going to get lawyers descend like vultures, and that whole idea is going to that you can just do whatever you want. It's not going to exist in a big company.
Yeah, right. Like the amount of money that Disney is going to get out of suing VR chat right now while they're a popular social network is not worth it, right? Like the harm that they would get for the dollar value isn't there. But you go back and see things like the Void. The Void took investment money. They became part of the accelerator program that Disney managed. So Disney took a chunk of that company before they handed them the rights to a bunch of their licenses. And that's the way Disney operates, right? Like, would you like the hammer? Like would you like the legal hammer? Or would you like the money for investment and then the legal hammer, right? It's a very easy way to win.
Yeah, another issue being pointed out in the comments with fully custom avatars, like you literally upload a 3D model, a VRM file or whatever, is performance, right? A huge issue in VR chat is often performance. Sometimes you come into a world and somebody's avatar is so ridiculously over the top that your FPS tanks down, and that's not going to work. Obviously, that's really not a great idea. But VR chat's done a lot to address that, to be fair. They put performance limits in. World creators can even limit the performance of avatars. They have these like automatic decimation features to show mobile versions of avatars. Props to VR chat for trying to solve an engineering problem, but it's Yeah, I think what's more likely is that we get like, you have the meta avatar editor today that lets you make a human. I think it's more likely that over time allows you to make non-human features, right? Like if you go back to that image of those fantastical avatars that we were showing, you can imagine an avatar editor that just let you make that in the same way that you can like, make a alien character in certain video games, right?
I'm seeing people talk about the illegality of ripping avatars or being represented. So I don't understand some of these analogies in the comments that people are going down. Go try to print out a $20 bill on a printer. You can't. There's code into the printer to stop that from happening. Now you can go and print your own shirt with a logo on it, but go try to print that shirt and then sell it to somebody else, and you will get a legal someone will reach out to you as soon as you cross a certain threshold of revenue to be on their radar, right? Like it's just the way things happen these days. So I don't know what that debate is. That's the way things happen in the real world. It's easy to imagine analogies happening in VR.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is, right? Like Siegfried greetings asking, why can I draw a pic of Superman, but I can't have a VR chat avatar do in your own home versus like when you're creating an avatar, what you're doing is you're creating like an interactive digital experience on other people's monitors or VR headsets throughout the world, right? It's like a distribution thing. But it's an interesting question, right? In theory, it's interesting, but I don't think your question is going to do very well in court, you know?
Yeah, and there's Arlen talking about Thrill and Fia's VR chat events, and the idea that the moment they get into those events, their PC starts crying at them because they tries to load up all the unoptimized avatars of 30 different people all at once. The thing that I'm curious about, like if you've been to enough of those events, Arlen, is is the dying performance part of the fun of the event now? Is it like part of the culture of attending those things? It's like, haha, look at this guy. He just chanked my performance because it's a big snake with a million polygons. Like, is that funny? Is that part of like why you go to those events now? I'm curious if you could share more there. Did we cover the mixed reality terminology, or did that get glossed over
No,
earlier? I cannot remember.
I think we forgot about that. Let's maybe briefly cover it. Sure. Rather get into the other Horizon Worlds content, but I think that somehow got lost in the order list here. So, for anyone who's missed it, Meta now uses the term mixed reality to mean both MR and VR. So they're using it as an umbrella term. So under mixed reality, you have both MR and VR. So when Meta says, in MR, they mean everything with Quest headsets, Horizon OS, all of the content and the whole system. So you could argue that VR is dead, but only if you put VR in quote marks. The phraseology VR is dead, but VR isn't dead because it's just called, immersive experiences now, for example. And the irony is, of course, there, Horizon World is a VR platform. We're talking soon about how much investment they're putting into Horizon World. It's not mixed reality. You kind of do get this very strange contradictory viewpoint that some people hold, right? Where simultaneously Meta doesn't care about VR anymore. It only cares about, pass-through mixed reality. And simultaneously, Meta is putting too much effort into Horizon Worlds, an entirely VR, not mixed reality experience. You can't hold those two positions together, right? Those are completely incompatible views. You can believe one, you can believe the other, but they're not compatible. This is a phraseology thing, though, right? I think it's stupid, to be clear. It's really unclear to developers what it means. For example, if you go to sign up for Connect 2025, it'll ask you what kind of developer you are if you say you're a developer and you have augmented reality, which what does that even mean today? Nobody's an AR developer unless you have like spectacles or something, or an old HoloLens. Mixed reality or other, and as well as AI, right? Mixed reality. This is VR and MR. This means you develop for stuff on a Quest headset is what this means, and other headsets. Again, confusing terminology. If you look at their website, they no longer use the phrase VR anywhere on the Quest section. If you go into the capabilities of every Quest, as well as wireless freedom and blah, 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 touch controllers, mixed reality and immersive experiences. That's what VR is now. Yeah. So the one thing that people will instantly say, and I already see Craig Melville saying, is what about XR? Right? Why wouldn't they just use phrase XR? The reason is that includes their AR glasses efforts as well, and they want a term to distinguish these things, right? So you have one half of Reality Labs working on the Quest headsets, VR, MR, whatever the hell you want to call it, and Horizon and Quest and all of that, Horizon OS. And then you have another section working on AR. And what do you call the guy who's in charge of this, or the girl, the woman, sorry, who's in charge of this, in charge of the Quest headsets and Horizon OS? They can't be the head of XR because that includes AR glasses, which are over here. You can have a head of XR, sure, that's in charge of both departments, the AR glasses and the headsets, but you can't have one that isn't. So you do need a term. What they used to use is just MR/VR or VR/MR. I think that just, for some reason, they didn't want to say you have 4 letters and a character. They want to do it in 2 letters, and that creates this confusion.
Oh, wow. Okay.
John says he needs a Venn diagram.
Yeah, and when David was doing this, I was imagining him as Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He was doing that meme to try to point to the org chart that Meta must develop now to make this all make sense to someone. Maybe it's Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know. I'm going to take this moment to, David had his ad moment on a previous show where he's like, in defense of ads, this is my in defense of VR speech, completely unscripted, straight from the top of my brain. Perhaps we should be thankful that Meta has abandoned the term virtual reality, because maybe it indicates to us that they realized that VR was too big to own, too big for them to dominate, too unwieldy and strange, a place that they can't profit from or make money that will hold them to the future. So, there's my speech on VR and why we're still reporting on virtual reality. This place I am right now, my whole being is, I believe I'm in virtual reality. I'm here with David. It's a place I go multiple times a week with an audience. I speak to you from virtual reality. I don't see that changing. What I see changing is the fact that Meta has basically declared it too big to own. All right, maybe I'm wrong. Oh, Jack, say, oh, Ian, you're wrong. Okay, we'll see. I think VR is too big for one company, and we've just seen that proven in the market. So that's my speech. Call me crazy, call me wrong. We'll see.
Okay, I made a really quick Venn diagram in Microsoft Paint while Ian was talking. This is please ignore the fact.
I was wondering if I had lost David. I was trying to figure out if I had angered him, and I angered him enough to make a Venn diagram. Darn it! This is how intense this conversation has gotten. Holy crap!
Okay, so to be clear, what Meta has done is rename this thing MR, right? Like they've taken the left side of the Venn diagram and called it MR instead of VR MR or VR and MR. That's what's changed here, to be specific. I don't think this has got anything to do with Meta deciding that they can't own VR, right? I think they're not, this isn't that Meta is not doing VR anymore. It's that they're just calling it mixed reality, right? One example we saw here, which confused the hell out of us last week. We obviously read all of Meta's blog posts, and just as we read all of the other VR companies' blog posts, and they come out with this blog that said something like, step into the best of mixed reality on Quest. And it was 12 games on Quest. And 11 out of these 12 games were entirely VR, as in they don't have an MR mode of any kind. One of them was a game that has you can be in VR or MR. And so they go, step in to mixed reality with 11 VR games and one game that you can play in either VR or MR. And so that kind of shows you where this becomes really, really quite confusing, to call everything in this category MR. I love that I didn't even align this properly.
I'm so upset at this chart, David. And the thing is, you had to put this into our. This is only on your computer. This isn't in our system. I don't have to look at this chart.
No, this is just from my PC.
God, thank God.
There's 2 casting systems we have for images. One pulls from our website. The other you can just send a file in real time, right?
This is nightmare fuel. Over on Blue Sky, I posted that I saw someone on Reddit had built a Raspberry Pi that listens to the conversations nearby and then feeds those conversations to an AI picture generator and then displays it on the little picture frame here for you. And so it's like an ambient AI analysis of whatever sounds are happening in the room are happening at any time. And I was like, someone actually made hell an actual physical product. This is as close to that physical product as you've gotten me in the VR market, David.
I'm going to make it even worse. Okay, I'm going to make it worse because Craig Melville has just asked, why is MR not in the AR part? Okay. So, yeah, this is so difficult. So there is like this virtuality spectrum from a paper back in the 90s, and some people would call that gospel. But in reality, what I look at is, what do the actual players in the industry use these terms to mean today? What do they mean when they use these terms? And today, if you go to the Wikipedia article for MR and AR, you'll notice that they're almost identical. The people who write Wikipedia don't know the difference between these things, because how Pico uses it, how all of these companies really use this term. MR means AR through pass-through, and AR means AR through transparent optics. Now, you can quibble about whether that should really be the technical terminology, but that's what it is used today. Whether you like it or not, that's what it is. So when we talk about AR glasses, we're talking about glasses that are transparent optics through which you see the world with virtual objects superimposed. When you talk about a mixed reality game, right, you're playing a mixed reality game on your Quest, you're using pass-through. You can debate this all day. The point is, even if you disagree with this, inside Meta, you have separate teams working on Quest headsets and Horizon OS, and working on AR glasses, trying to take the concept of Orion and make some sort of product out of it. And that's all I'm saying. That Meta, like the story here is just that Meta has changed this terminology to take away this part. So they just use MR to mean everything that happens through a pass-through headset and the entire spectrum.
So if we're I hate talking about this as like a piece of art we should correct. Like I don't just
I didn't paint in about 30
if we
seconds.
swap this for this, then this for this, then this makes sense to 4 people. All right, god dang it. Yeah. I go to virtual reality in my headset, right? I can see you through the headset sometimes too. But when I put on this to go to a place, and sometimes that place is the moon, and that's my place of focus where nothing else can get me. None of the pings out there can get me. But goodness, and now VR game, everyone's breaking apart your photo design skills that you made in Windows Paint from virtual reality. I'll add, okay.
Yeah.
This is okay. We're gonna come back to this because it's unending. We cannot discuss
not this.
the bastardization of terminology here. I just, it's very simple. We go to like David won an argument with me about headsets winning as a term. I do believe we're going to call these things headsets. All right. I have to talk about the field of view thing that we talked about with Andrew a little bit yesterday, but go ahead. Let's talk about what you've done here. This horror.
Oh, I was just making a joke that this is now pictorially showing what Meta has done for their terminology. Okay, that's
I'm so upset. All right,
James O'Loughlin's pointing out that there's another company that would like you to use a different term for all of this, and that is spatial computing.
Oh God! So yeah, let's throw up the. Someone go drag up the Intel. I think there's somewhere on some hard drive. I've downloaded the Intel ad that they spent, I think, millions of dollars to produce, that debuted their own term for this. And I can't remember what Intel's term for this was back in the day. But this video, go find it. Intel Reality. It's the stupidest. A guy takes a helicopter to leave a party. I mean, okay. That was the worst of the old times. I need to talk about Andrew's conversation now that we've gone full into this, and go watch the discussion yesterday and the end of that as we got into talking about dimensional double shift. And I put him on the spot to say, hey, help me reason through this terminology argument here. And he's like, I'm not even gonna. He tried to bounce out of the thing too. He kept using the words immersive and talking about immersive being the thing. But I tricked him, okay? I went to Andrew and I put him on the spot in a different way. And I asked him on that stream, do you think people will role play in low field of view AR glasses? And his answer was the simplest no I've ever gotten. Like out of it's just no, just like a very like go check the stream. It's just thanks Andrew for being clear on that. If the power of these headsets are that they let you role play, and one of those role plays is I want to focus right now. There's nothing AR glasses, the low field of view, other branch of technology that all these companies need to own, right? If all of that doesn't let you role play, then what am I using it for? Okay. It's not, it's like, I'm sure it'll be used for some things, but it's not going to be role playing.
And that's exactly why you need a different phrase to talk about AR glasses and mixed reality headsets with wide field of view that can transition into full VR. Now, are we ready to talk about our big Horizon Worlds topic?
Yeah, fine. I got a bad taste and I don't have any beer in the house, but I would be joining the drinking game with the rest of them. All right, let's move on. What do we got? This is the desktop editor. So this is a big one for us to have. This is why we were late to the show today. We had to cover this that dropped right before we came in. So we apologize for being late, and for anyone that had to catch up or watch us, listen to us on audio instead of catching us live because of that time shift. This is the article. And I think when David breaks this down for you, you'll understand why this product's so important and kind of, I don't know, this is like this feels like a last ditch effort to me. This is starting to feel like if this starts to not work, they start pulling up stakes on certain things.
Oh, interesting you called it a last-ditch effort. I would call it kind of the beginning of making Horizon Worlds not a joke. I would say it's a new beginning for Horizon Worlds.
Well, so I called Civilization, the Civ game that's coming, either the beginning or the end of Meta's ambitions in gaming. And I'm using the same phrasing here. I think we're saying the same thing, David, that the same thing is the case here.
Sure. Depending on how it turns out, you could either see it as the beginning or the end. So Horizon Worlds, as everyone probably knows in the comments, is Meta's metaverse platform, right? The idea being you have all of these worlds within this one app. You can load into them from the Quest system menu. You don't have to install an app. You just click on it and you go into the world, just like VR Chat and Rec Room and such. But in Horizon Worlds, pretty uniquely, most worlds are built inside VR using the touch controllers to place primitive 3D shapes, and then rig up behavior with this kind of spatial visual scripting model. And that's cool because it means anyone with just a Quest headset can build in VR virtual worlds, games, experiences. In practice, though, that means that those experiences that are built are, as the shape kind suggests, quite primitive, right? And so there's been kind of widespread ridicule over the graphical quality, particularly of these worlds. So back in 2023, Meta started testing with game studios, and it actually spun up its own game studio internally called Uro Interactive, professional desktop creation tools for Horizon Worlds that would let studios build kind of higher fidelity, higher interactivity experiences, games within Horizon Worlds that aren't relying on these old tools. So they're importing 3D models, just tri-mesh models and sound effects and textures, and they're using programming, specifically TypeScript, which is like an offshoot of JavaScript if you're not familiar, to set up all the behavior. Last year, they started testing this with Horizon Worlds creators. They could kind of sign up and use this. And the news today is that they've kind of upgraded this system, this Meta Horizon desktop editor, and made it available in early access to anyone who wants it. So this is it's an application that's actually available on the PC store, the Meta Quest Link app on your Windows PC. It's Windows only, and it kind of resembles like a very hyper simplified Unity. It's higher level than something like Unity. So you're talking about the same kind of thing as UEFN, the Unreal editor for Fortnite, or the Roblox Creator Hub. It's lower level than something like Horizon Worlds in VR. So you are getting access to like this proper desktop editor software that lets you import 3D models, import textures, import sound effects, set up scripted behavior, all of the kind of things that you would on a basic level do in Unity, but without kind of going down all the way to like C# code and without kind of doing, some of the more detailed development stuff like shaders and such that you would do in Unity. So it's higher level, easier to use, less technical skill required. And the idea here is that this means that individuals, as well as in theory, small studios, can build much higher fidelity and much higher sort of interactivity and quality and more advanced worlds within Horizon Worlds, right? It doesn't just become this kind of playground creation tool, becomes a serious way to build serious experiences. They also include, for example, you can build your own user interfaces inside it, that work in VR and mobile. There's NPCs, right? That sounds, surprising, but you can like set up NPC behavior in this, and over time, they say they're even going to use AI to let you talk to NPCs using like large language models. And in the US right now, you can AI generate sound effects, and also you can do that for the TypeScript, right? So the code editor lets you AI generate scripts if you don't know how to do that. The AI 3D generation is very, very interesting. That's coming next year. The idea is you literally type what kind of 3D model you want, and then you can populate an entire virtual world with these 3D models. And so I'll bring up a few more kind of screenshots of this editor interface. You can see here's like the NPC UI where you can bring in the default like NPCs and script them up. You can kind of see some of the Gizmo UI here of things you can bring in. You can set up quests, particles, raycasts, spawn points. You can pose avatars into chairs. It's that thing that we've kind of been asking for. That's higher level than Unity, but lower level than in VR creation tools. And so, I plan to check this out. Hopefully this weekend I'll get a chance to test this out. I'd love to hear from anyone who's tested this out. And on next week's show, please let us know in the comments if you are a developer or a creator that has tried this out. It's going to be a difficult pitch for serious developers to use this, right? Because you're locked in to Quest only for VR, although you do get web and mobile by default, right? Because Horizon Worlds works on web and mobile. You can use this to, in a few minutes, in theory, build a game that runs instantaneously on Quest headsets, mobile phones, and web browsers. But then that means you can't bring it to other headsets unless Horizon Worlds comes there. It also means that for transactions, you're giving Meta 47.5% of each transaction compared to 30% for store apps. So if you build a store app, be it Walkabout Mini Golf, Take a Shot, or whatever, and you buy a course in it, Meta takes 30% of that. In Horizon Worlds, you can do monetization. You can sell items. You can also sell like essentially experiences, right? You can do tickets essentially by using the scripting system, but they take 47.5% of that. So some of the news here is that Meta has now expanded this monetization system, or will on Monday actually expand it from 3 countries now to 23 countries in total, if I remember the figure correctly. So you will be able to do this monetization at scale. They've also announced a $50 million creator fund where they're going to give out money using this complicated algorithm of like how much people engage with your world and how much they enjoy it and how highly they rate it. They're then going to, over the course of a year or so, like distribute out money to creators, just kind of say, you build a great world. People are really using this. Even if you don't have any monetization features, here's some cash. That's kind of like this idea of incentivizing people to go build in this. So you could, in theory, as an independent developer, build an experience in this. If people love it, Meta will literally start sending you money.
Yeah, so there's an interaction that I've been thinking about through this whole conversation, David, because it's been spawned by the comments here. It's a little bit off topic from what you're doing, but it is related. But it's this interaction in Ready Player One, the movie, when he finally gets a bunch of money and buys a whole bunch of virtual items that give him basically agency inside the virtual world, like give him power. He gets the holy hand grenade and a whole bunch of other things, but he also gets a haptic suit, the highest end haptical suit with, I think, crotch inlay. I think they key to point out that he's gotten the crotch add-on to his haptic suit, but he purchases it in the Oasis, and they show the whole interaction in this movie of him doing clicking through the interface, and then boom, it says physical delivery at the end of the interaction. This is what I'm kind of getting at here about the size of the VR market right now. Right now, I'm having delivered accessories for Quest headsets that Meta doesn't get any profit on. Like they reluctantly use Meta's systems for their hardware delivery. There's no like invitation inside of Meta to purchase your accessories directly inside of Horizon Worlds and give hardware makers like a reasonable cut where they're only taking the processing fee, not the 35%. How do we get to that world where like I'm buying stuff on Horizon Worlds and then I'm getting it physically delivered to me in the real world?
Yeah, that's certainly an interesting idea. They would have to add some sort of API to communicate to a server from in this, right? You would need like a server to server API. They do have such an API for their in-app payments for apps, right? Theoretically, you could build a shopping app on Quest today that lets you do this, and it would communicate with their, warehouse server. 100%, a developer could do that if they want. It's just a matter of adding the APIs. One thing that I'm really interested in trying is how much can I do with TypeScript in this, right? The TypeScript is known by hundreds of millions of developers. I think it's like the most popular language for a lot of web development today. A lot of people know TypeScript. What kind of libraries can I use? Can I communicate with external servers? Can I pull in things from other APIs? If they do enable that, all you need is to have the ability to call external APIs, and you could. But of course, the problem is 47.5% cut. Nobody's going to build a business off of that. You've reported on how Big Screen couldn't build their movie rental business on a 30% cut. Now imagine a 47.5. A lot of people have pointed out Mark Zuckerberg has been highly critical of Apple for its 30% cut, calling them, the tollkeeper of the generation of computing. How hypocritical that then in Horizon Worlds, 47.5. Now, you could argue that, for people who are just building games in this and using this for like virtual items and such, it's reasonable because Meta is providing everything, right? They're providing the servers, everything that just works here. It's not just like Steam or, the Quest store where they're just, providing a storage space for downloading apps and such. They're everything from all the functionality, all the high level stuff, the avatar system. They're building out the core tech, and you're just kind of putting the data and assets on top of that. But then, of course, you can't build an exotic business of any kind that isn't, as you say, that retail. Nobody's going to do that on a 47.5% cut.
Yeah, exactly. And our commenters are ripping this apart and going through all of the analogies here. And I really appreciate Big's comment here. He's mentioning that the fund specifically seems... So we've got the fund coming up here, and I think it's a good time to transition to that fund here, unless there's something specific we need to add on to the... Because we're going to move to the fund here, and that'll be the last subject for today as we move on to our... our regular scheduled programming after this. I want to encourage you again to become a member, subscribe to our work, support what we do here. Go to the website, become a member on UploadVR.com. I'm in talks with David and the team here on how we can add more benefits to make that membership on our website more substantial. But it really, really, really helps us to see that support. The $50 million creator fund, to my eyes, feels like a drop in the bucket, especially when you consider the percentage cut. Like, the people out there trying to make businesses out of what they do are not stupid. They know that, $1 million or $100,000 or $50,000 short term is not the same as a recurring revenue stream that pays off year after year after year. And that's kind of the situation here. So what if you go watch, I'm sorry for the meandering here, but there's a lot of things that this all touches. And I've referred to that Andrew discussion yesterday considerably. We'll have an article pulling out a couple of his quotes, but I specifically didn't try to put Andrew on the spot yesterday at Alchemy, and because he's Google owned, because he really couldn't really talk about these larger trends at play. But you got to go listen to him be so bright about the future of VR technology overall. And the one thing he says right near the end of the show is that he calls the mobile app version of Horizon, the interaction that you're doing there, a fail state. And that's what I'm seeing reflected in our comments. Biggs talking about the entire marketing of Horizon Worlds.
You muted yourself, Ian?
Sorry, the entire marketing for this effort, avoiding the mention of Quest. This is an operating system they're trying to ship. This is now a game engine they're trying to ship that makes mobile apps.
Hold on.
And virtual reality experiences?
There's one misconception here. So Biggs is saying, how is no one mentioning the fund specifically mentions mobile experiences and not XR? There are two funds. You're thinking of the $1 million reward thing. That's for mobile. The $50 million creator fund is both for VR and mobile and web. It's not a specific type. So there's two things here. There's a $50 million creator fund where they give out money to the best worlds. And then there's the 1 million.
Meta, these tools don't aid in making VR experiences any better to me. They aid in making the experience for mobile better. Like, I don't see this changing the game, so to speak, when it comes to improving VR gaming itself. What this seems all geared toward is improving the on-ramp to VR. They're trying to build an on-ramp that gets you into immersive experiences. But does that on-ramp fail? Like, does it fail to give you any reason to come back? Like, is it Big saying that they're kind of setting this up as this is where you get the introduction to your VR experience, and then you go and get the deeper VR experience once you're actually in headset? Is that how this is going to end up working? I just don't see how this ends up solving problems that people who enjoy VR actually have.
Sure. So there's multiple things to kind of break down there for sure. There's kind of this specifically is going to benefit both VR and mobile and web, right? We keep forgetting Horizon Worlds is on 3 platforms. It's on web. You can go into Horizon World from your web browser. It loads in like 5-10 seconds, or your phone through the Horizon app, or on your VR, right? These worlds work on all of them, right? These worlds work on all of them. As far as I'm aware, you can actually also do instant preview in VR using this, right? So you have your headset connected via link. You hit switch to VR and you pop on your headset and you're previewing in this. So this makes it easier to build higher fidelity worlds for all of them. Now that's separate to the question of, does this solve any of the Horizon Worlds' fundamental problems? Arguably, kind of maybe, right? Because a lot of the problems of these worlds is they are simple and basic and shitty because they are made with in VR tools, right? And you saw Rec Room do the same thing. Rec Room, this mirrors Rec Room Studio, right? Rec Room Studio did the same thing, except they did theirs through Unity, where you use Unity to build a world and then export it. All that Meta is doing here is that same strategy of Rec Room Studio, except it's an all-in-one streamlined app rather than going through a legacy game engine. It's similar to Epic's UEFN, right? Before the UEFN, a lot of Fortnite worlds, because they're made inside Fortnite, were pretty terrible, right? And now you see really serious, well-made tools come out. Whether or not this matters for people who actually enjoy VR depends on how good this tool is, right? I plan to dig into it. We'll have to see what people build with it. Is this powerful enough to build a good VR game that people want to play, right? And with the advantage that there's no loading time, or 5 to 10 seconds loading time. Is this good enough to build a VR game that people want to play? Could someone in theory make something as good as Walkabout Mini Golf?
Yeah.
Question is, can they in 3 years, right? If you look at a lot of this needs to look at what's the trajectory, what's the acceleration, what's the pace, what is Meta Horizon desktop editor look like as a platform in 3 years and in 5 years? Do we see Meta, instead of doing this kind of scattergun, give money out to whoever works, fund a studio to build a full-fledged game, especially once they get some of the more advanced NPC functionalities, right? They are saying that they have NPCs now, and they say they're going to give you NPCs you can talk to and have world awareness. do we see a studio build a single player game inside this that, you know, people can click on instantaneously and be inside in a Quest headset? I don't know. We're going to have to see. I think a lot of this just can't be answered until we dig into this and see, is this a tool that serious people can make serious games with, or is this just more slop?
Fascinating question there, and to see the AI integration tools there to make this bet that actually accesses a different class of creator or a different group of makers that aren't served with Unity, right? You could imagine if this is successful, you can imagine everyone else rapidly trying to shut this down from reaching acceptance. What I'm getting at here is, and I think our audience is kind of like echoing here, so I'm going to try to sum what I'm seeing in the audience being suggested here. It feels as if Meta is releasing these tools to try to get creators to build something with that has real like in-app purchase value. What is something somebody can put and make with these tools and put on our platform, and then some significant percentage of the audience goes into that world and says, actually that was great, I'm going to spend $199 on this version of it, or like this outfit, this experience, like something more. What can people go and do that actually pulls in real revenue from people on a repeated basis? The same way Golf Plus, Walkabout Mini Golf, Beat Saber, the model that they all have for their in-app purchases. How do you recreate that from this system, which is outside of all other company control?
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely the goal, right? And as people are pointing out in the comments, Roblox has done it, right? If you talk about, like, does this exist? It's not a theory. These things exist. Roblox has done it. Fortnite is doing it. There are platforms that are showing that just with really powerful user generation tools, Roblox has been around for like 20 years now. People don't realize they've been working on the core tech of this for 20 years. Meta's hoping that it can kind of get there really quickly. I do think the AI thing we should probably linger on a little bit, because while today it's, in the US, it's only sound effects, the 3D model thing, like, that's crazy if it works well. I'll try and bring up a screenshot here that shows you how this works from Meta's preview, right? So this is coming later this year in the US. This is screenshot one. So you're typing in, generate a futuristic generator machine with white keys and a bright yellow drum, right? So this first step just creates the 3D model. Then let me bring up screenshot number 2 here. Apologies for the clunkiness of this, folks. The next stage, please load. Some seconds. Here you go, right? You get the textures are then brought up from this and textured. So this, from not having any 3D model at all, according to Meta, now this could all be BS, but we'll see later this year, you're creating 3D models. Now, if you apply this to someone who has no modeling capability and just wants to create a virtual world, like they want to create their own world, and they don't have the money to go on the Unity asset store and start buying assets or other such things, and they want to make something of their own unique, this is huge potential. Even if it's not good in its first iteration, where's it going to be in 2, 4, 5 years? The ability to, we always talk about, like, the ideal use case of this is that eventually you can do this part in VR, right? That you can literally holodeck style, instead of typing this, say out loud with your voice in your Quest, put this here, put this here. But step one for now, because of the advantage of kind of doing some of the baking that I suspect they're doing on the server side here, step one is being able to do this in a desktop tool with text.
So, Jorg, talking about adult worlds, so they did Meta was one of the first there to really implement and hard implement age limits and age guidance for worlds. They did that a while back, and then VR Chat followed suit, as does, I think Rec Room was kind of brought to heel, even though Rec Room did have junior accounts from a very, very long time to mark what they've done in the past. The thing that I want to ask about that the mention of adult worlds, though, brings me to that question of, okay, what does paying for more content or time in Horizon Worlds look like? And is there ever an instance in those adult worlds where adults are paying for more time or more plays or more goes around in a particular game? Is there anything like that? Because as much as you're like right, David, that we have to go see what people build with this, I am just so skeptical that it's not just the quality of the experience, it's the fact that I own it afterwards. When I buy something on most other platforms. And that we can argue all day long about whether that's actually true of the things you buy on other platforms, right? You're actually buying a license to play a game on Steam. You're not actually buying your games. You don't need to put that in the comments. We know. My point is, like, to the person thinking, the way they're thinking about this stuff, when I go into Horizon Worlds, I automatically assume I'm not paying a dime for anything because of the fact that I'm like on shifting sands. Like, you can feel like you're at a place that isn't permanent.
I think that's a very interesting question. As you say, children's for Roblox and Fortnite and Minecraft to buy these items. As you asked, though, will adults? Will they buy items versus will they buy a ticket for an experience? Right? Would you buy a ticket to go and see if there was a comedian who's really popular in real life does a show in Horizon Worlds? And I don't mean a shitty low bitrate 180-degree video. I mean they're there with their avatar in a future version of Horizon Worlds that supports body tracking, doing a show and interacting with the audience inside VR. If there was a limited ticket, say, there's 30 tickets sold for a 30-person audience, would you buy one of those tickets to go see your favorite comedian? Your favorite intellectual, right? Your favorite podcaster, your favorite author is doing like a signing, a book signing in Horizon Worlds. Would you pay for that? Like, would you pay to watch, movies inside that? There's all kinds of potential possibilities that are beyond just like buying, a cool hat for your avatar that could appeal to adults.
Yep. I love that. Wonderful, wonderful overview there from David. And everyone in our comments talking about all of this stuff. The most impressive thing that I saw in Horizon Worlds, and it was years ago now, was a live variety show put together by performers for a intimate audience. I mean, it was maybe 4 performers with an audience of maybe 10 to 15 people. And they were doing those on a regular basis. And I think they had some funding from Meta to put on those shows. And yeah, it was fantastic. It was a full-on like scripted variety show where they had come up with jokes and props that they used around them to make fun of the fact that they were in Horizon Worlds doing this thing. It was a really, really cool idea. So David is exactly on the right point that like there is a pathway for like paying for performances in VR. The thing that I think I've struggled with is just unless it's scalable, unless unless like 99 pennies of every dollar go to the creator, it's not scalable in the ways that we really want to see it scalable, right? Like you want to see those performers really get the money for their show and do another show next time. But Meta needs to like justify all of its overhead, and it wants a bigger cut than everyone is allowing. And like we've got how many stupid examples do we have to have of this history playing out for us that like we're not gonna let that happen this time.
Yeah, we should point out that this is also the case for Roblox, right? Roblox, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's on the order of 50%, right? It's much higher than a store tax. But yeah, as you say, these live performances are some of the magic of social VR. I remember going to one of these in Altspace back in like 2014 or 2015 and VR chat as well back then, and seeing as early as then, even, with DK2s and Razer Hydras, which for anyone who doesn't know, were tracked controllers that were wired with a very short cord. That's how crazy this technology has come in 10 years. 10 years ago, you got track controllers and they were attached to a base station that sat on your desk with a wire that was about 3 inches long or something like that, Sorry, 3
You would
feet
use
long.
those to give your headset sixed off, right?
Yeah, you could attach them to your head as well. The point is, you could see even then that this is going to be magical. Something right now that exists in Horizon Worlds that there is a lot of slop in Horizon Worlds. There's Meta Donalds, and we can laugh at that all day long. But there are actually some gems there. The Soapstone Comedy Club being an example right now. There is a comedy club right now that's conducted inside Horizon Worlds that is genuinely great, and it shows that there is a strong future in some senses for this vision of social VR. And you see, of course, in VR chat, we should point out there's a lot of this stuff, right? There are people who are doing everything from yoga classes to Alcoholics Anonymous to everything you can imagine is happening in VR chat. But there are some people that are put off by the kind of avatar art style in VR chat, and they do prefer something that's more human. And that's why a lot of people used to use alt space instead of VR chat. And then some of those people moved over to Horizon Worlds. I think Soapstone, I may be confusing it with another live show, but used to be an alt space. At least there is one that used to be an alt space that moved to Horizon Worlds now. And it's the kind of thing that, someone asked in the comments earlier, did we talk about the awful meta Horizon ad from Valentine's Day that was like this AI generated voices talking about a singles club? And
oh God,
they've been
I missed it.
I posted about it on X, and it kind of went viral. A bunch of people kind of copied it off, and then it was on like CBS late night news a couple of days ago. I think I might have.
You're writing the late night jokes.
I think I actually might have knocked over the first domino that led to that being shared by someone. Took it from my article and wrote a Forbes article about it, and then CBS late night picked it up. So there was actually a dot from me to this being talked about and ridiculed for how terrible it was, to be clear.
Fantastic. Good doing the Lord's work over on X, apparently, David.
The point here is that there are good things happening in this, and Meta, the marketing people at Meta should be promoting that, not their vision. Show what people are actually really enjoying in Horizon, not what you want them to be enjoying in Horizon.
Yeah, good comment too there. And yeah, the out of place feel, right? There's that out of place feel can hit you even with your avatar, right? That the artistic choices that Meta is picking and just trying again and again. How many generations would you call it of avatar has Facebook launched in public since 2014?
Oh, many. I think we're 5 or 6 at this point.
And each one has a different effect on like how much you feel like part of what that avatar is. And like, gosh, I mean, even having avatars at all leaves out the group of people that are like, I want to be represented as a blob of meat. I want to be a block of ice in VR. Like, I don't want to be anything. Like, I'm going to this space to escape that physical body that I'm represented as. I want to go, if I'm going to do it, I want to be really weird. And like, it's just, all of it is constrained creativity. And how many times does Meta have to like hear, we don't like your creative constraints?
Yeah, I think what they may be referring to, when they say they feel out of place, is the fact that you go into this and you're surrounded by screaming children. And that is the problem for a lot of social VR, right? It happens in VR chat, it happens in Rec Room. It's not something that's unique to Meta, of course. It's something that's just like a general feature of social VR. And I think if I was in charge of trying to figure out how to solve this, here's what I would do, okay? I would make the default interface of Horizon Worlds or whatever your social VR app is a 2D panel in Quest. So you're in your pass through, and I would have an interface that lets you explore communities, whether it be some of those ones you mentioned, like a comedy club, it could be, a book club, yoga, whatever. And then you would, from this 2D interface, apply to join a community. Maybe you record a quick, 15-second video of saying, here's why I want to join. And then, some hours later, you get a confirmation or rejection, hopefully confirmation back as a notification on your phone. And now you're a part of that community. And then you go and join, and you know that these are likewise people that are looking to talk and converse about a specific activity with you. That's how I think the magic of social VR can work. It should work more like Facebook groups than like the Facebook feed. It just going in and jumping in and being surrounded by a bunch of screaming children in some slop app is never going to be sticky for people. But give them something that they care about, right? So, it's an enthusiasts club for something you care about. It could be stamp collection as the, generic example, or it could be model cars, or maybe you're bird watchers or whatever. And you go in and talk to these people about something that you care about, and you get that magic of like what Mark Zuckerberg has talked about being magical about the internet in general, right? When you ask him about like his argument for hanging out in virtual spaces, which is that if you're in a town somewhere, there's probably one or two people at most, if at all, that are interested in your favorite hobby. But in the globe, there are millions. And all it needs to happen is that you need to find a way of being connected to those people. And
Do,
if you can
do,
connect to those people in social VR, that's the thing that you come back to every day.
I've got to have a weird question here. Do people pay for explicit experiences in VR chat? Right, that is a thing that is out there that exists. Can the same thing be done on Horizon Worlds? And my fundamental question there is like, how does Meta evolve into that, right, from where it is today, a platform for a very different crowd
I don't think they
with
do.
experiences that are very, very different? Because I'm seeing.
Again, folks. So there is a bar in Horizon Worlds that is often staffed with a bouncer that has an automated system using their in VR scripting system where you reach your arms out like this, and based on your arm span, they determine whether you're an adult or not. And then you can get through, you go through an elevator and you go up to a bar, and they do have a bar-like environment for adults. And sometimes they do have a bouncer that's on staff kicking people out. So they do have that, but I mean that's a very different interpretation of the word adult than like you're seeing, pornographic content. I don't think Meta is ever going to support that, just like Apple doesn't, right?
I,
There was a
I
Apple doesn't
so
support. You can't put porn in the App Store.
so Andrew on yesterday's show, go watch that again and make that pitch. He described a feature that they had built into the game, Vacation Simulator, once, and they ripped it out. And so there's a game in a part of Vacation Simulator. You throw snowballs at a sign. And each time you hit the sign with a new snowball, the sign gets madder at you. A new sign pops out and says, you really shouldn't hit me with the snowballs, right? He said that an earlier version of the game, those were screaming children. And each snowball that you made, you could actually stack the snowballs together and have a mega snowball and toss that mega snowball at the children, and the nuke would go off when the snowball hit them, a snowball nuclear. So they removed that feature from Vacation Simulator, but I loved the symbolism there of that is that the general reaction is I don't want to interact with strangers and I don't want to interact with children, and
Was this
that's
not your
what they're
response?
forcing.
Was this not your response to why? Did I not ask why the app stores need to have porn on them? And what?
Yeah. So, yeah. So you're talking about app stores and adult content. What I'm saying is that how how do you get? So here's the comment. I want to read the one from. Uh, is it Davin? No. I think it's the comment was saying that Walmart makes its business by following an 80-20 rule. We care about the mass market, 80% of people, and then there's 20% of weirdos that we don't really care about. We don't make sense. That's what Apple did on its store, right? Like all of that adult content is not allowed on Apple storefront of any kind, and they did a wonderful job of it. And you're pointing out that Meta is following that model here. What didn't happen with the rise of the App Store, that did happen with the rise of VR, is a community of VR chat users existing out there using VR in the most aggressive ways possible for 8 hours plus and increasing that usage for a decade plus. That is a dynamic that did not exist on the rise of the Apple App Store, right? There's a community of adults and an economy around them that exists today. You're telling me Meta is going to always be parallel to that
Yes.
and serve everyone except that community? That's or
Yes.
okay.
I mean, lots of people they didn't use it on the App Store, but lots of people use their iPhone for porn, right? The iPhone was probably the biggest accelerator for porn adoption in human history, but Apple doesn't care. They don't want to be part of it. They let you do it in Safari. They're not going to, implement some sort of anti-porn blocker, but they don't care about it. In the same way, Meta is going to let you download VR chat and do whatever you want in VR chat, but I don't think it'll ever be something that they care about in the Horizon Worlds. It's just toxic for a brand. It's none of these big tech companies allow pornography. None of the big American tech companies specifically, right?
And I don't know. I'm having this is going to be
I
a
mean,
very interesting place to watch. How do they succeed?
be Captain
without
America.
that audience.
Disney's not going to let you be Captain America in an app that supports pornography.
Yep. But VR chat people are still going to do it, right? Like that's the reality.
Yeah,
right?
but if that business got 10 times bigger, Disney would shut it down. You know, or I know all of the IP.
Shut what down?
VR chat. It would be a class action lawsuit against VR chat from all of these IP holders. If you had this business being something that hundreds of millions of people were using, or billions, and they were having, you were having Mickey Mouse, or that's not a good example. It's not copyrighted anymore. You had Captain America alongside graphic pornography. Of course, they would. The lawsuits would come in seconds. Disney lawyers would be on it in less time than they could, respond.
Yeah, well, very interesting conversation here. That the developing market focus of Horizon Worlds, I think, is the key, and it's very interesting to have both adult-only bars while not knowing what you're exactly going to get bounced for if you say the wrong thing too crudely. We have been on the topic of having Meta try to define hate-based groups for us and how those are recognized in various spaces. We'll be on top of that into the future. This has been a very long, engaging conversation with our audience. Apologize for misappropriating your comment out there about the other 20% of the market out there. Yeah, I didn't mean to call them weirdos. But it's very interesting.
call the most dedicated VR enthusiasts weirdos on VR download.
Well, I mean, it's very hard to think of like the average person is like, I'm going to use VR for 50 minutes or an hour today. And then there's people who their average is 6 hours. And that's unusual. I think is a fair term for that right now.
Yeah. You meant that's what normies would call them, not what you would call them, of course.
Yeah. Fair. Thank you, David, for defending me there. And I apologize to all the people that I've offended in our audience who depend on VR chat for whatever they get out of it. My point is that's free speech in its purest form. And we're talking about the copyright aspects of free speech and how free speech interacts with copyright. What does free speech look like on Horizon Worlds is something we're going to return to. I think that's it for us. Tune in for us on Tuesday with Don Hopper for VR Gamescast. Please become a member on UploadVR.com to support the work we do directly. We are going to be working on providing more benefits to those members over time. And everyone on YouTube, thank you for your support as well, especially our patrons. It's incredible what you do in supporting us. We will be on top of this going into the future. And we'll see you. We'll see you next week.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for all your comments. Really interesting discussion this week. And we'll see you again next week at the same time. Not the same time, 9 a.m. time. Because hopefully Meta will not drop another big
Don't
news.
Challenge them like that. Why would you challenge them?
Of course they're going to now. Of course they're going to. They'll announce the biggest news of the year. Some
product manager is like, I'm going to piss off David Heaney that day.
All right. 3 minutes after we go live, they'll do it even worse. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.